Kimberly had already claimed victory in several beauty pageants and dreamed of one day becoming Miss Brazil. The young woman yearned for recognition, and her wishes came true. Unfortunately, she could no longer hear people admiring her appearance and lamenting the abrupt end to her life. They say beauty will save the world, but this is far from always the case. Sometimes, beauty can be the cause of a terrible and senseless demise. Kimberly spent the entire day visiting her friend. She rehearsed several times what she planned to tell her boyfriend that evening, whom she had been dating for 2 months. The young woman fully understood that prolonging the situation was pointless, but due to her tactful nature, she had repeatedly postponed this serious conversation. Brilliant prospects awaited her, so why limit her social circle to one person? Resolutely prepared for dialogue, Kimberly got into Raphael's car and smiled. She was unaware that her plans would not come to fruition that evening. Manacor is a municipality in Brazil's Amazonas state. It includes a city of the same name, several towns, and 7 indigenous villages. The city's population is just over 20,000 inhabitants. It sits on the Madeira River, a picturesque location with a hot tropical climate. In this small Brazilian town, Kimberly Oliveira was born on February 26, 1998. The baby girl was known from birth for her sweet face and calm demeanor. She was very close to her mother Nayla, being the only girl in a family with 2 younger brothers. From childhood, Kimberly knew that her parents and nature had gifted her with incredible beauty, as even adult men would gaze at the young schoolgirl, notable for her clear, dark eyes, sensual lips, and radiant smile. From an early age, Kimberly prepared herself to become a model when she grew up. She was a diligent student, behaved naturally in front of the camera, participated in various contests, worked in small advertising campaigns in her city, and did everything possible to make her name known. Kimberly didn't just showcase what nature had so generously bestowed upon her. She worked tirelessly on her figure, spending several hours a week in gyms, monitored her manners, and practiced proper speech. In short, she strived to do everything necessary to achieve her goal. To get noticed, Kimberly participated in beauty pageants and even won several titles. She became Miss Manacor 2019 and a finalist for Miss Amazonas. The following year, she planned to compete again in the state event to win it. Victory would pave the way to another of Kimberly's dreams, participating in the Miss Brazil contest and claiming a new title. At first glance, it may seem that being a beauty queen is very simple. In reality, it's just as demanding as any other job. To achieve results, beauty alone is insufficient without wealthy patrons. A girl must possess intelligence, constantly monitor her diet to prevent extra pounds from settling on her waist, and maintain her reputation. This means avoiding any scandals, watching her speech, and generally behaving in a way that sets an example for others. People who knew her always spoke of Kimberly in positive terms. She was sweet, polite, amiable in communication, and never boasted about her appearance. Kimberly was very dedicated to her pursuits, even though they consumed a lot of time. Perhaps her desire to win a beauty pageant emerged after learning that her mother Nayla had once held the Miss Manacor title, so they shared a love for all things glamorous and glitzy. Nayla provided her daughter with all kinds of support, gave her advice, and was simply there for her. Kimberly enjoyed swimming, jogging, and just working out to stay in excellent shape. Many of her sports activities were broadcast in real time. The aspiring model loved sharing her life on social media. She showed and talked about what happened behind the scenes of beauty contests. Kimberly always looked so happy that she infected her followers with positivity. The young woman had grand dreams and hopes that someday her photo would grace the covers of popular magazines. People would start recognizing her, and her name would become known throughout Brazil. And one day, they indeed started talking about her. Her photo appeared in the media not only in Brazil, but worldwide. Unfortunately, it was for an entirely different reason. and she could no longer know about it, as Kimberly Karen Moto Oliveira's life ended in an instant. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. In 2019, Kimberly had to leave her hometown of Manacor, where her family and friends remained. She journeyed to another Brazilian city called Manaus to enroll in university. Manaus was situated 206 miles from Manacor and was the nearest major city to the Amazonas state capital. Over 2 million people resided there. As frightening as it was for Kimberly to depart her quiet homeland, family, and friends, she realized that a larger city would offer far more opportunities to fulfill her aspirations. The young woman planned to study dentistry and was prepared to make sacrifices to build her own future. Yes, she dreamed of becoming Miss Brazil, but alongside this, she wanted to establish another career in healthcare, understanding that beauty isn't eternal and education is essential in any case to remain in demand. Kimberly's uncle, Henry, her mother's brother, lived in Manaus, close to the university, so she decided to stay with him. She had always communicated well with Henry and felt very comfortable around him. The move, university classes, new friends, all of this made Kimberly feel very excited. She sensed that her life was reaching a new level. It was during this time that Kimberly met 31-year-old Rafael Fernandez Rodriguez. One evening after classes, the student was relaxing with her friends at a nightclub when an attractive guy approached her. Rafael, originally from the municipality of São Bernardo do Campo in the southeastern Brazilian state of São Paulo, was the only son of Fatima and Nilton Rodriguez. He had moved to Manaus in 2017. Before this, he had gone through a divorce and simply wanted a change of scenery. Moreover, the young man had secured a new job that provided him with a good, stable income. He worked at the local court as a labor dispute lawyer. Rafael rented an apartment in a residential complex in downtown Manaus. Rafael was almost 10 years older than Kimberly, and in fact, this person already knew well who this girl was, as he had been following her on social media for some time. Kimberly was quite open on her page. She talked about herself, beauty pageants, her family, workouts, and everything she found interesting. Her number of followers was constantly growing. Some even felt they had known Kimberly for years. Rafael somehow stumbled upon Kimberly Karen Moto Oliveira's social media account. He knew almost everything about the girl, while she knew absolutely nothing about her new acquaintance. When Kimberly was relaxing with friends at the nightclub that evening, Rafael recognized her immediately. He approached to introduce himself and offered to treat the student to something. But the girl declined, citing that she wasn't alone and didn't need anything. Essentially, she rejected the young man, but did so very politely. Rafael didn't confess to Kimberly that he already knew who she was and that he followed her on social media. He behaved as if he was seeing her for the first time. The girl instantly forgot about the man who had shown her attention. She was accustomed to people constantly approaching her to get acquainted. However, Rafael didn't accept no as an answer. A few days after meeting at the club, he began flooding her with likes on her photos and sending numerous personal messages requesting a meeting. Then Rafael somehow managed to obtain Kimberly's number and started sending her messages on WhatsApp. The spam attack continued until the student responded. The two began communicating via messages. Then came a moment when they decided to meet and get acquainted in person. Rafael and Kimberly continued friendly communication, getting to know each other, until March 2020, when they finally officially declared themselves a couple. And from that moment, Kimberly's life changed drastically. As is often the case, everything looked fine from the outside, but in the first months of their relationship, the girl complained to her friends that Rafael turned out to be quite different from how she had initially imagined. Upon becoming an official couple with him, she discerned his true nature. Rafael was very jealous and extremely toxic in some situations. He often displayed possessive traits. The man checked her phone, looked through photos, apps, contacts, doing everything to deprive Kimberly of personal space. He constantly disliked who she talked to, what photos she took, who wrote to her on social media. They had only just started dating, but the man kept all of his girlfriend's communication under complete control. The wildest part was that she gave him no reason for this, but Raphael continued to behave very aggressively. It got to the point where he forbade her from having male friends and publishing certain things on social media. Every time they met, he interrogated Kimberly about where she had been, what she had been doing, who she had talked to. Raphael wanted to control every aspect of her life. At that point, they had been dating for only 2 months, and Kimberly confided in friends that she couldn't endure it much longer. She deemed Raphael's behavior towards her completely insane. She no longer wanted to waste her life interacting with a toxic individual. The young woman decided to break up and was waiting for the right moment to tell her boyfriend. At the time, Kimberly was just 22 years old. She felt suffocated by the total control from her partner. She was amazed at how she could have fallen for his words and not noticed the warning signs in his behavior. She was genuinely tired of this romance. A brilliant future awaited her ahead. A career in dentistry, victories in beauty pageants, work as a model, and much more. Kimberly didn't want some man to ruin her plans and undermine her self-belief. She didn't want to be controlled and manipulated. She didn't wish for her world to be limited to one person. The couple argued constantly. Raphael always tried to make amends with gifts, flowers, and trips to expensive restaurants, but this was only a temporary solution to the problem. Deep down, Kimberly knew their relationship had no future, and no dinners or presents could save it. On Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day was celebrated in Brazil. Kimberly was a bit upset in the morning because her studies had forced her to stay in Manaus instead of returning home to congratulate her mother on the holiday. The young woman really wanted to spend this beautiful day with the person closest to her. But since she didn't have that opportunity, Kimberly posted a photo of herself with her mother on her social media page and wrote a tender message. "There's no love like ours. No words can express the admiration I feel for you. Thank you for always being there for me. I love you and miss you very much." This sweet message once again highlighted the touching relationship between daughter and mother. After Kimberly published the post, she continued her morning by going for a run with her uncle Henry and his friend. Later, her boyfriend, Raphael, joined them. The group of health enthusiasts headed towards the nearest park. Everything seemed fine between Kimberly and Raphael. They weren't arguing and both appeared to be in good spirits. After the morning run, the niece told her uncle that she planned to spend the day with one of her friends and that she would let him know later what time she'd return home. However, around 10:30 in the evening, Kimberly messaged her uncle to leave the front door unlocked because she had forgotten her keys. The young woman still had plans for the evening. She had been preparing all day for serious conversations with her boyfriend and didn't want to bother Henry unnecessarily. The uncle read the message from his niece and did as she asked, then went to bed. Waking up the next morning, Henry realized that Kimberly had not made it home. According to him, this was very unusual, as the young woman always did what she said she would. And this time, she had clearly indicated that she didn't intend to stay with her friend or with Raphael. The uncle immediately had a very bad feeling. Kimberly, knowing how her loved ones worried about her, always kept her mother and uncle informed of her whereabouts. But now, Henry had no idea where she was or what had happened. He tried calling his niece several times, but got no answer. The man also dialed Raphael's number, but again, no one answered the call. Additionally, Kimberly's friend contacted him and said she also couldn't reach her and was worried about where she had disappeared to. They had agreed that Kimberly would call her and tell her how the conversation with Raphael went. Concerned, Henry got in his car and drove straight to Raphael's apartment to find out why these two were ignoring calls. But no one was there either. The uncle knocked on the door and tried calling again, but it was all in vain. At that moment, Henry decided that something bad had happened to both of them and went directly from his niece's boyfriend's apartment to the police station, reporting that these two had gone missing. However, the police were of no help. Kimberly was 22. Raphael was 31. At the station, they thought both were old enough and there was no reason to raise alarm. Perhaps the loving couple decided to take an unplanned getaway somewhere secluded, and they didn't want to be disturbed. In any case, they were adults and had the right to do whatever they pleased. However, Henry knew that Kimberly would never make her family worry by leaving without saying a word. The man called his sister and told her what had happened. Nayla, Kimberly's mother, was battling cancer at the time. Her condition was already not the best, and worrying about her beloved daughter made it even worse. However, the woman gathered her willpower, forbade herself to think about the worst. Although other relatives supported Henry's concerns, since the police refused to take any action, they decided to act on their own. The family began sharing photos of Kimberly and Raphael on all social media platforms, asking people to report the whereabouts of the young couple. They hoped that followers might have accidentally seen the girl and her boyfriend somewhere. Although they feared that the two might be in some danger, they still hoped they would be found safe and sound. Unfortunately, this didn't happen. After some time, the authorities finally decided to take action, and on May 12th, around 4:30 a.m., a body was found. The police broke into Rafael Rodriguez's apartment in search of any clues that might indicate where the lovers had gone. When officers entered the master bedroom, they discovered Kimberly's body. She was lying in a pool of blood on the floor, covered with a sheet. Several stab wounds were found on her body, one to the chest and two to the neck area. Preliminary data suggested the girl had been dead for about 4 hours. It was a horrifying scene. Bloody trails led through all the rooms. As detectives surveyed the rented apartment, they found the murder weapon. It was a long kitchen knife lying on the balcony. It had bloody fingerprints on it. The knife was immediately sent to the lab for analysis. Officers also noticed that the apartment was very cold because someone had left the air conditioner on. This was likely done to slow the decomposition of the dead body and mask the emerging odor. Although the police found Kimberly in Raphael's apartment, the owner himself was nowhere to be seen. If initially he was also considered missing, now he became the prime suspect. After the knife was sent to the forensic lab, it became clear that the fingerprints on the murder weapon belonged to none other than Rafael Rodriguez, the deceased girl's boyfriend. His photograph was immediately published on all social media platforms. Police urged the public to report the whereabouts of this man, as he was considered dangerous. After the autopsy, Kimberly's body was transported by small plane to her hometown of Manacor. The girl was buried on May 13, 2020. About 200 people came to bid farewell to the young beauty. People expressed condolences to the deceased's relatives. This day was difficult for everyone. Saying goodbye to someone who had their whole life ahead of them, all the opportunities to achieve something, is very hard. In her hometown, many knew Kimberly because of her beauty pageant victory. There was also a traditional watermelon festival where Kimberly always performed and promoted the town event. To some extent, this girl was the pride of her city, and now she will forever remain in the hearts of the residents as a beauty queen. At the same time, followers on social media mourned her senseless and premature death. No one could understand who could raise a hand against sweet, smiling Kimberly. Law enforcement knew they needed to act quickly to find Raphael before he took the chance to flee to another country. Kimberly's friends told the police that the girl had been thinking about ending the relationship with this man, so perhaps that night she tried to break up with him. And this is what prompted the man to commit the terrible act. It's bitter to realize that the beauty's dreams were cut short in the blink of an eye because of a man who decided that if he couldn't have this girl, no one would. The day after, on May 13th, patrol officers discovered Rafael's car in Caracaray, about 370 miles from Manaus. According to road camera data, the man had been driving at such high speed that he lost control and crashed. While taking a sharp turn, the vehicle flew off the road and overturned. Since the white Audi was in a wrecked state and the driver himself was nowhere to be seen, he had either left the crash site on foot or been picked up by a passing vehicle. It's unknown if Rafael was injured in the car accident, but his car was a heap of twisted metal. Traffic police found that after the accident, Rafael was picked up by another driver and taken to the nearest settlement. There, Rafael called a taxi, went to the bank, and withdrew some cash. He then headed to Boa Vista, a city near the Venezuelan border. Detectives believed the man planned to flee Brazil and hide in Venezuela. They immediately headed to the border, spoke with authorities, and confirmed their suspicions. Rafael indeed tried to cross the border, but fortunately, he was denied entry. His attempt was recorded thanks to a medical checkpoint set up due to the pandemic. The man realized his plan had failed and disappeared into the nearest forest. So now the police focused their search on the wooded area. Meanwhile, on May 14th, surveillance footage from the night of the girl's disappearance was discovered. The recordings clearly show Rafael picking up Kimberly in his white Audi from her friend's house, where she had spent the whole day. Another video shows them approaching Rafael's apartment together around 11 p.m. Before that, they were also seen in the elevator. Everything looked normal. The young people weren't arguing or sorting out their relationship. They calmly went up to the right floor and entered Rafael's apartment. Then, around 1:30 a.m., Rafael left the residential complex, completely alone. He looked calm and very composed, showing no signs that he had just committed a serious crime. No worry, no guilt or shame. His face reflected absolutely nothing. From the outside, it seemed like the guy had just left his own apartment in the middle of the night and was simply going about his business. Except Kimberly was never able to leave his apartment after their conversation about breaking up. Meanwhile, a search party near the Venezuelan border received intel about Rafael's suspected hideout. They found a man concealed in a makeshift shelter in the woods. It appeared as if this guy intended to reside there until the investigation ceased. Before law enforcement could apprehend him, 6 individuals Rafael had hired as private security attacked them. These were random people Rafael had paid a hefty sum to protect him from assault. These guards took their security job very seriously. Armed with machetes, they nearly attacked the authorities. The outcome was uncertain until the police explained the gravity of the situation to the guards. They revealed that Rafael was suspected of brutally murdering his girlfriend and that, by obstructing his arrest, these people were becoming accomplices. Naturally, no one wanted to risk themselves for a stranger, especially a criminal. They hadn't even realized the man who paid them well was evading law enforcement. The guards immediately surrendered their positions, and Rafael Rodriguez was arrested and taken into custody. It also turned out that 2 of his hired men, local residents aged 24 and 17, had helped him hide in the forest, so they were also arrested for aiding in his concealment. After his arrest, Rafael seemed to transform. All his composure vanished. He confessed to the horrific crime and told the police everything that transpired on the night Kimberly stopped responding to calls. Here's what he divulged to the detectives. Late in the evening, Rafael picked up Kimberly from her friend's house, and they both headed to his apartment. There, the couple was having a good time. Everything was great. At some point, the girl decided to take a shower, and Rafael used her absence to check Kimberly's phone, which she had left in the bedroom. The young man wanted to see who she had been communicating with in his absence. With familiar gestures, Rafael began opening apps and browsing through all messages, notifications, and contacts. Then he came across something that literally set him off. Rafael claimed he discovered messages from men. He became very angry because he didn't want his girlfriend to have male friends or chat with any strangers. He decided to confront Kimberly, but before that, He went to the kitchen, grabbed the largest kitchen knife, and hid it behind his back. When the girl came out of the shower and lay down on the bed next to Raphael, he started questioning her about what he saw on her phone. According to Raphael, Kimberly lied to his face and said she had no relationships with any of these men. They were just messages sent to her, but she ignored them and paid no attention. Because of this lie, Raphael exploded, pulled out the knife, and began stabbing the girl lying on her back. He plunged the knife into Kimberly's neck and chest several times. She died from these wounds. It's impossible to imagine what the poor girl felt at that moment. A second ago, she was relaxing on the bed next to her boyfriend. And then, he pulled a knife from behind his back and carried out a brutal attack, accusing her of something she hadn't done. Kimberly must have been caught off guard and didn't even have time to process what was happening when her soul left her body. At the same time, Raphael claimed he loved Kimberly very much. How then could he raise his hand against his girlfriend over some messages? How could he do such a terrible thing to her and then simply leave the body under a sheet and drive away? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video, it's really important. The trial of Raphael was postponed due to the pandemic. The defense claimed their client had a mental disorder that rendered him unfit to stand trial. These assertions led to Raphael undergoing several evaluations. Eventually, it was determined that he was competent to face legal consequences for his actions. On October 27, 2021, the court proceedings began. The prosecution called several witnesses, presented DNA evidence, and surveillance camera footage. The prosecutor detailed Raphael's alleged sequence of actions that night. After killing Kimberly Oliveira, Raphael attempted to move her body and dispose of it, or at least conceal it. But he panicked upon realizing blood was literally everywhere. The lifeless body proved too heavy to discreetly remove from the apartment, which was out of the question. Raphael couldn't think rationally at that moment, so he phoned his father, 60-year-old Nilton Rodriguez, and confessed everything he had just done. His father silently listened to his son's horrific monologue and advised Raphael to urgently call the police or immediately turn himself in at the station. But the young man told him he couldn't surrender. Instead, he decided to flee to Spain. Leaving the apartment, he left the air conditioner running to mask traces of the crime. Then he got into his car, a white Audi, and headed towards the Venezuelan border to get to Spain from there. Along the way, he discarded Kimberly's mobile phone in some wooded area. He hoped this would throw the police off his trail if they tried to track the mobile. Due to his distress, Raphael didn't notice a turn in time and the vehicle veered off the highway. Surprisingly, he was barely harmed, escaping with just a couple of bruises and scratches. Then Raphael hitchhiked to the nearest town and took a taxi to the bank to withdraw some cash. Afterward, he headed to Boa Vista. When denied entry into Venezuela, he hid in a makeshift forest shelter after hiring security. Raphael claimed he did all this in a moment of anger, not out of jealousy, but because Kimberly lied to his face. Only those close to the girl could guess what really happened. That night, she likely suggested ending their relationship, and Raphael decided that if he couldn't have her, no one would. On October 28, 2021, Raphael was sentenced to just 14 years in prison. Is a young, beautiful woman's life truly worth only a few years behind bars? On the day the verdict was announced, Kimberly's mother passed away from leukemia. Throughout the trial, Nail's condition had steadily worsened. The woman had been battling cancer for a long time. She found strength to fight the illness until justice was served for her daughter. But as soon as the sentence was read, her body simply let go. And within hours, she died. Grief-stricken and exhausted by illness, the woman attended all court proceedings via video chat from the hospital. When the trial ended, she seemed to hurry to leave this earth to reunite with her beloved daughter. But these aren't all the deaths Raphael Rodriguez is responsible for. His father, 60-year-old Nilton Rodriguez, took his own life by jumping in front of a train the day his son was arrested. He was ashamed of Raphael and for raising a monster. He never recovered after that phone call. However, Raphael's mother, Fatima, expressed her opinion on the matter and stated it was nothing more than an accident. Her husband had been suffering from high blood pressure and was very anxious about his son's arrest. That day, he was on the railway platform when he felt unwell and allegedly accidentally fell onto the tracks in front of a passing train. But many people are certain that Nilton took his own life, unable to cope with the situation. Kimberly's two younger brothers had to endure 2 deaths of their closest family members. First, they lost their older sister, and then, following her, their mother passed away. Before they could recover from one tragedy, they faced another, equally terrible one. Raphael destroyed so many lives in an instant, but his mother said in her statement that she wouldn't condemn her son. Others had done that without her. He had already begun to pay for the mistake he made. Raphael is Fatima's only son. He didn't smoke or use prohibited substances, but he had an irresistible, all-consuming love for this girl, and he was blinded. These are his mother's words. However, no matter how strong the love might have been, it in no way justified what he did. Fatima further assured that her son was a calm, balanced guy who everyone liked. She had witnessed his past relationships, and he had never shown jealousy or attempted to control another person, let alone raise a hand against a loved one. All her claims were refuted by Raphael's former partner, who testified in court as a witness. She said their relationship ended because of how jealous Raphael was and how he displayed possessive traits. Apparently, the mother didn't know her son as well as she thought. This process also took a toll on her health. In 2019, Fatima was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was left completely alone, without the support of her husband and son, and she's having a difficult time. In most people's opinion, Raphael got off too lightly for his crime. 14 years in prison isn't such a long time for someone's life. Nevertheless, in 2023, his sentence was effectively reduced by another 8 months. Raphael's defense filed an appeal citing an error in entering the verdict, and the judge accepted it, reducing the prison term by 8 months. This enraged many people, making them feel that Kimberly Oliveira's case wasn't taken seriously for some reason. But what can be done if these are the laws? The court considered that Raphael acted on emotions and couldn't control himself at that moment. Unfortunately, the beautiful girl couldn't foresee the consequences awaiting her after breaking up with her boyfriend who, instead of letting go, decided to settle the score, and instead of expected freedom, Kimberly lost everything at once, including her own life. External beauty helps attract people, internal beauty keeps them. Kimberly was beautiful both externally and internally. It's a pity that this beauty became the reason for her demise. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon. When Malcolm Astley received a late-night call informing him that his daughter's vehicle had been discovered in the parking area near the city beach, he immediately leaped into his car and sped there, as if he could still manage to rescue Lorraine if she were drowning. The man wandered along the water's edge with a flashlight, trying to spot his daughter in the waves, but she wasn't there. The tragic tale of 18-year-old Lara Mestley shook even the most indifferent hearts. First love, kisses, first serious relationship. The whole school envied this couple, tall, stately athlete Nathaniel Fujita and petite Lorraine Astley, who outshone everyone with her individuality and energy. Although they had known each other since childhood, their high school romance began in their senior years and lasted 3 years. What happened next? Why did these two break up? And why could no one believe what actually occurred? We'll discuss this in today's story. Lorraine Dawn Astley was born on April 1, 1993, to Mary and Malcolm in Boston, Massachusetts. Lorraine was an only child, so she was the center of the universe for her mother and father. Both worked as teachers and from childhood instilled in her mind the right concepts of truth, wanting the girl to grow up to be a good person. Unfortunately, in 2006, Mary and Malcolm divorced and shared custody of Lorraine. But despite the divorce, both parents adored their little girl and supported her throughout all periods of her life. And although this young woman lived only 18 short years, she managed to do a lot, not only for herself, but for society as a whole. Schoolgirl Lorraine Astley was a very active person in every sense of the word. She played sports, tennis and soccer, sang in a music group, was a member of the Youth Symphony Orchestra, a member of the church choir, a counselor at a children's camp, and even played the lead role in the theatrical production of Annie at the local arts center. Lauren was always involved in something and didn't have a minute of free time. Although the girl was tiny, standing at just 4 feet 11 inches, her vibrant personality and individuality made her very noticeable. She was most interested in the performing arts. Lorraine had a beautiful, strong voice, and not a single school or city celebration went without her participation. She was sincerely happy when she became the soloist of the a cappella group in high school. The second thing that fascinated Lorraine was social life. She organized various events and was an active participant in all kinds of charitable actions. The purpose of her life was to care for other members of society, whether friends, relatives, or just strangers. Classmates loved her for her incredible honesty and openness. They knew who to turn to when any problems arose, and Lorraine always gave 100% when asked for help. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. At age 12, Lorraine first traveled to New Orleans to aid victims recovering from Hurricane Katrina. She returned there twice more with friends. The girls provided assistance to flood victims. She was so young, yet caring for others always came first for Lorraine. Such actions speak volumes about her qualities and iron will. Everyone around her, parents, friends, classmates, and even strangers, felt the inner light emanating from her. Lorraine Astley attended Wayland High School, where she was known not only as a diligent student, but also as a participant in various school events, be it concerts, competitions, sports, or community service. In high school, the girl truly blossomed. Classmates even considered her a trendsetter. This young woman was so vibrant that many wanted to be like her. Around this time, Lorraine started dating Nathaniel Fujita. These were her first serious relationship. Nathan also attended Wayland High School, and he and Lorraine had known each other since childhood. He was the star of the school football team, a promising athlete. Quick, tall, and coordinated, Nathan was very popular at school. Girls went crazy for him, attending all football games and acting as personal cheerleaders. But in his heart, there was only room for the petite, cheerful Lorraine Astley. Nathaniel was the eldest son of Beth and Tom Fujita. Tom, a renowned guitarist and professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston, was an extraordinary person. He stood out from other community members with his creative pursuits. Once, Lorraine even interviewed Tom Fujita for a school project, later posted on YouTube in 2010. Being an important part of Nathaniel's life, Lorraine largely became a member of Beth and Tom's family. She visited their home very often. The parents of the two love-struck teenagers also communicated closely and kept in touch. In the first 2 years of their relationship, everything was fine between the young people. They spent a lot of time together, hung out, played sports, and simply enjoyed life and youth. Both were very attractive and seemed like the perfect couple to others. But over time, they began to clash over various issues, and their youthful romance started to resemble a roller coaster. Nathan and Lorraine would argue, break up, then make up and get back together. One day they adored each other immensely. The next, they were irritated by the slightest thing. Such relationships are often seen in adult couples, let alone high school students. Although Nathaniel was somewhat spoiled by attention from females, he still felt very jealous of his girlfriend. At times, it seemed to him that she was ready to do much more for others than for him. In her final year of high school, Lauren began to think more often about what she wanted to achieve in her life. She started making plans for the future and choosing a college for further education. It was during this time that the girl unexpectedly realized there was no place for Nathan in her new life. She grew tired of the emotional roller coaster in their relationship and began to consider ending it all. Senior year is the last stage before adult life for any student. At 18, it usually seems like you have everything ahead of you, and you dream of great accomplishments, a successful career, new acquaintances, and vivid experiences. Lorraine eagerly awaited college admission. She applied to Elon University in North Carolina, while Nathaniel chose a different institution. He was invited to play football at Trinity College in Connecticut. This was his cherished childhood dream. Lorraine's friends knew about the problems in her relationship and wanted to support her. Together with Lorraine, they compiled a list of reasons why she should break up with Nathan. This list mentioned such qualities of her boyfriend as hot temper, wild jealousy, and displays of aggression. He could also speak disrespectfully to his mother. The girl, left alone with herself, weighed everything once more and decided to end the high school romance. She broke up with Nathan in April 2011, on her birthday, considering it the best moment. Lorraine chose an appropriate time and informed her boyfriend of her decision. They were going to be separated in the fall anyway, so both would simply continue living their own lives. But Nathaniel saw the breakup in a completely different light. He felt a sense of loss. The college he was invited to no longer excited him. All he could think about at that time was his relationship with Lorraine Astley. From a sporty, ambitious guy who was always on the move, constantly training, Nathan turned into a withdrawn person, immersed in his thoughts, lying on the couch all day and looking miserable. Nathan stopped hanging out with friends, avoiding their company altogether. Lately, he had been consuming a lot of alcohol and indulging in weed daily. Although Lorraine had broken up with Nathan several months earlier, she still continued to worry about him. It was unbearable for her to cause pain to someone once close to her. The girl repeatedly approached her friends and asked for advice on whether she should try to help him somehow, to which her friends unanimously insisted that she shouldn't give him reason to think everything could be restored. In 2011, Lorraine graduated from high school and eagerly awaited her last summer at home with family and friends. To celebrate the new stage of her life, she and her friends threw a big party. About 150 students and graduates gathered under a huge tent, dancing and having fun, including Lorraine's ex-boyfriend, Nathan. The girlfriends were chatting nicely when Nathan approached them. He was already quite drunk, so he decided to try to reconcile with his girl again. But Lorraine politely asked the young man to step aside and leave her alone. She believed everything had already been said, and there was no point in having empty conversations. They had discussed the breakup enough times, and she was truly ready to move on. Moreover, in his drunken state, the young man would hardly react adequately to her words. However, Nathan couldn't even entertain the thought that his girlfriend would date someone else. He didn't give up and continued to pester Lorraine. At some point, the girl ran to one of her friends in tears and complained that Nathan wouldn't leave her alone. He was following Lorraine, not wanting her to dance with anyone. With each passing minute, Nathan began to behave more aggressively. Probably the resentment and consumed alcohol had done their job. When Lorraine once again refused to talk, the guy approached and hit one of the poles supporting the tent with all his might. The entire structure instantly collapsed. People rushed to lift it and put it back in place. And now, not only Lorraine, but all those present expressed their desire for Nathan to leave the party. The celebration was irretrievably ruined. Later, the girl even told her mother about how Nathan had behaved that night, unwilling to let her go. He was angry because Lorraine had broken up with him, angry because she didn't want to talk to him, angry because the girl seemed happy without him. For a while, everything quieted down. Lorraine decided to earn some money before starting college and got a job at a clothing store in the local mall. On Sunday, July 3, 2011, Lorraine arrived at work at 10 a.m. Security cameras recorded her entering the mall and going up the escalator at 9:45. After finishing her shift at 6:45 p.m., the girl left the building while talking to someone on the phone. Unfortunately, this was the last time she was seen alive. After work, the girl planned to meet a couple of friends and go for a walk, but she never showed up. Her friends became worried. Such behavior was uncharacteristic of Lorraine. If she had promised to come but couldn't for some reason, she would have definitely found a way to let them know. Not only her friends were concerned, her father Malcolm was also very worried. The man knew that his daughter had some plans for the evening, but after work, she was supposed to stop by home to change clothes and then rush to her friends. She didn't do that. Her father immediately realized something was wrong. He didn't waste any time and immediately called the police department to report his daughter's disappearance. Information about Lorraine Astley's disappearance spread instantly throughout the town. People who knew her were in a panic. No one had seen the girl after she left the mall. The police immediately began search operations. In Lorraine Astley's case, everyone acted very quickly, unlike many disappearance stories where law enforcement waits a certain amount of time before starting an investigation. Friends and family also didn't sit and wait for Lorraine's return. They sought help. So the search for the missing girl began immediately after Malcolm's call to the police department. That night, law enforcement officers made a huge discovery. Lorraine's red Jeep was found in the parking lot at Wayland Town Beach with the windows rolled down. Her purse and laptop were inside, but the girl herself was not there. There were no hints as to where she might have gone, leaving the car with open windows at the city beach. When Malcolm was informed about his daughter's car, he immediately rushed there. Like a madman, he jumped out of the car and ran to the water. As if she were drowning, he could still save her. It was a heartbreaking sight when the father wandered along the water's edge with a flashlight, looking for Lorraine, but she wasn't there. The girl's friends, upon learning about the red Jeep, were so worried that they spent the night at the beach, hoping Lorraine would appear. They just sat on the shore and waited, pondering where she could have disappeared to. At that moment, no one even entertained the thought that something horrible might have happened to their friend. Officers began questioning her close ones, asking if there was anyone who might potentially harm Lorraine or take her somewhere against her will. At first, no one could suggest a single candidate. The police had suspicions. They directly asked about her boyfriend and learned that the girl had recently ended their relationship. All her friends unanimously insisted that Nathan couldn't harm Lorraine. Yes, he was sometimes withdrawn and aggressive, but that was only because they had broken up. However, the police knew that a breakup and jealousy could be the main motive for a crime. Of course, the officers had already heard about Nathaniel Fujita. They went to his home that same evening when Lorraine disappeared to ask a few questions. The police talked to him and his mother, Beth. It turned out that the guy had been home the whole time. So essentially, he had an alibi, albeit not a very reliable one. Nathan admitted that he had seen Lorraine that evening. She stopped by for 5 minutes, but never got out of her car. According to the guy, they had a short, very awkward conversation, after which Lorraine left, and he hadn't seen her since. The detectives found the story plausible. The fact was that the breakup had a very depressing effect on the young man. He fell into a deep depression and stopped leaving the house. Nathan's mother, Beth, was so worried about her son that she took him to a psychiatrist, but it didn't help. Not knowing how else to help the young man cope with his emotions, Beth secretly went to the mall where Lorraine worked. She asked the ex-girlfriend to talk to her son, hoping it would somehow ease his distress and help him come to terms with the separation. The next morning, shortly before dawn, a cyclist riding on a path near the highway stumbled upon a terrible discovery. Her route ran near a marshy area. Looking around, the woman noticed something floating in the murky water. She stopped and came closer to inspect. It was the lifeless body of a young girl. Lorraine Astley was found just 5 miles from town. The previous evening, her friends had gathered together on the beach near the red Jeep and tried to imagine where Lorraine might have gone. And they had no answer to this question. The classmates just sat in silence and waited, paralyzed by fear. They didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think, didn't know what to feel. It's hard to even imagine that a girl you were laughing and having fun with just yesterday could disappear like this. The body was in the water about 30 feet from the roadway. When it was pulled ashore, the cause of the girl's death immediately became clear. The state police investigator pulled back the edge of the blouse collar and saw a severe wound on her neck. 18-year-old Lorraine Astley was found strangled with an elastic cord tangled in her hair and a gaping wound on her throat. The body was immediately sent to the medical examiner's office. Malcolm Astley hoped until the last moment that it wasn't his daughter, even when he went to the medical examiner's office. And then he did something no father should ever have to do. He identified the body of his first and only child. Lorraine had just turned 18, a vibrant, musically gifted girl with her whole life ahead of her. Malcolm had to make the official identification. He immediately knew it was his Lorraine. The pain the man experienced at that moment is indescribable, but he still had to convey the heartbreaking news to his ex-wife, Lorraine's mother. The tragic news spread instantly through the town. Friends who once knew the happy couple of Lorraine and Nathan, with some doubt in their voices, stated that Nathan was definitely not involved in this. He would never do something like this to his beloved. No one believed in the reality of what was happening. However, the detectives had a different opinion. When they talked to Nathan's relatives, they found out what enormous damage the breakup with his girlfriend had done to him. He was no longer the same cheerful football player, the girl's dream. Nathan had turned into a bitter person locked in his grief. He showed no enthusiasm for American football, a game he had dreamed of since elementary school. Investigators learned from Beth that she had secretly approached Lauren to talk to her son, trying to cheer him up, at least as a friend. Perhaps the woman didn't know all the details of her son's relationship with his girlfriend, which is why she decided to take such a desperate step. She probably couldn't even imagine how this meeting would end. All this time, Lorraine herself had been worried about her ex-boyfriend, also noticing changes in his behavior. Having a kind nature, the girl decided to at least just talk to Nathan to try to pull him out of depression. She wasn't planning to return to the relationship, but felt she owed it to him to support him during a difficult period in his life. When Lorraine was leaving the mall after work, security cameras recorded that she was talking on the phone. Her mobile phone records showed that she was talking to Nathan. The girl planned to stop by his place for 5 minutes and then head home to change clothes for meeting her friends. Naturally, she didn't tell anyone about her plans. Nathan's parents weren't home. Investigators learned that upon arriving at the residence, she sent Nathan a text message, and it was just one word: here. This is how she let the guy know she was near his house. This message was sent on July 3rd at 7:05 p.m., and it was the last message Lorraine ever sent. Nathan's house was the last place where the girl was seen alive. All of this was enough to point detectives in the right direction for their investigation. On July 4th, the police again visited Nathan's residence to talk to him. However, this time he wasn't home, and his parents had no idea where their son had gone. In any case, this couldn't hinder the investigation. The officers needed to find evidence supporting their theory that Nathan was involved in Lorraine's disappearance. So the police quickly obtained a search warrant for Nathan's house and started with the garage. It took them only a few minutes to realize something terrible had happened there. In addition to finding several elastic cords that matched the cord found on Lorraine's neck, they also found several bloodstains. Blood was also discovered on the garage floor, on the doorknob, on the kitchen floor, in the kitchen sink, and in the bathroom sink. It was evident that someone had tried to wipe it off the surfaces. In the basement of the house, detectives found a black sports bag. Inside was a pair of sneakers, soaked through with traces of mud. And in a hiding place in the attic, accessed by a ladder leading from Nathan's bedroom, another pair of shoes was hidden, along with a pair of blood-soaked boots and blood-stained clothes. At first glance, the mud on the sneakers matched the type of mud near the swamp where Lorraine's body was found, but this required urgent transfer of evidence to the laboratory. The evidence was indisputable. Forensic examination confirmed that the blood found on Nathan's clothes and boots matched Lorraine's blood, and the mud was indeed from that area of the marshy terrain. Nathan Fujita was declared wanted. A few hours later, he was found at his cousin's house in a neighboring town. The next morning, on July 5, 2011, the 18-year-old football player was arrested and charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend. When he was taken into custody without warning at his aunt's house, Nathan was quiet and compliant. He didn't say a word during questioning, and for the next few months until the trial began, he behaved in a similar manner. Either he was afraid of saying too much, or he didn't know how to justify his actions. On August 23, 2011, Nathan attended a preliminary hearing in the courtroom. When asked if he pleaded guilty, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, Nathan said he was not guilty. The prosecutor immediately realized that some kind of game had begun here. Apparently, the lawyers had already thought out a defense strategy. Nathan was charged with first-degree murder, as well as assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. More detailed information about what happened to Lorraine Astley that evening became known during this hearing, including that other wounds were found on her body, which were alleged to have been inflicted before her death. On the night of the crime, Nathan called his cousin and asked if she wanted to hang out. When his cousin refused, citing other commitments, Nathan got upset and hung up. The next day, when Lorraine's death became known, the cousin called Nathan and asked if he was aware that his ex-girlfriend had died. The guy's response was frightening. He said they would never find the murder weapon. Nathan also confessed to his cousin that he had driven Lorraine's car, the red Jeep, to the parking lot at the city beach. He explained that he wanted to hang out with his cousin because he needed a distraction. At the end of the hearing, the prosecutor motioned for Nathan to be held in jail without the possibility of bail. This request was granted. Then, about a month before the trial, another hearing on pre-trial motions took place. Very interesting and disturbing information concerning the defendant came to light. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video, it's really important. In 2009, Lorraine and Nathan were in one of their periods of breaking up again. The girl continued to live her life, and at some point went to a dance with her girlfriends. There was a young man who had previously shown interest in Lorraine. Having broken up with Nathan, Lorraine decided to give a new boyfriend a chance. They even managed to kiss while dancing. But then Nathan appeared out of nowhere and rushed at Lorraine's new admirer with his fists. Nathan threatened to cut this young man's throat if he ever approached his girlfriend again. Over time, the incident at the dance was forgotten. Lorraine's family and friends never noticed any signs of violence in their relationship. The only thing was that Nathan was possessive and jealous. If he drank, he became aggressive. This situation, which occurred 2 years before the crime, clearly showed the fury and jealousy that Nathan was capable of towards another person. And considering the wounds found on Lorraine's body, her boyfriend's words said, then took on a completely different meaning and indirectly pointed to Nathan as the perpetrator. During this hearing, it also became clear that Nathan was going to use the insanity defense. This didn't remove the charges against him, but it would significantly reduce the punishment for the crime. Nathan's trial began on February 13, 2013, 18 months after Lorraine Astley's death. The defense team immediately claimed the defendant's insanity and continued to adhere to this version until the end of the 3-week trial. The lawyer, in his opening statement, admitted that Nathan indeed took Lorraine's life. In his opinion, there were two questions: why and how. The defense's argument was as follows: Nathan didn't stalk Lorraine after graduating from school, didn't drive by her house, didn't call her or send messages. He didn't want to see anyone or leave the house at all. Naturally, the guy's friends, as witnesses, confirmed this information, reporting that Nathan really fell out of the social circle, stopped going to training, and didn't want to talk to anyone. Friends and former classmates were worried about him because Nathan had become completely different in just a couple of months. The lawyer summed up by stating that something was actually wrong with Nathan because he was suffering from a serious mental illness. His mother, Beth, convinced her son to see a psychiatrist, and the doctor diagnosed him with severe clinical depression, not just a depressed state due to breaking up with his girlfriend, but a genuine mental illness. The psychiatrist suggested medication and therapy, but according to the defense, Nathan refused. Mental issues could have arisen not only because of the split with Lorraine Astley, but due to recurring head traumas resulting from playing football throughout his school years. The relationship breakdown may have merely triggered an episode. Lorraine worried that she had become the cause of such a severe ailment in her former boyfriend. She feared he might do something drastic to himself. The girl's concern for Nathan led her to the Fujita house on the evening of July 3, 2011. It was at this time that Nathan experienced a temporary psychotic episode, which prevented him from realizing or controlling his actions. They headed to the garage to talk. Then the boy, not understanding what he was doing, grabbed an elastic cord, threw it around Lorraine's neck, and began to strangle her. He wasn't in control of himself at that moment. His body was acting, and while his mind was disconnected from what was happening, the boy had no emotional connection to the crime. Nathan was still in a psychotic fit when he repeatedly cut Lorraine's throat. At that moment, he was insane. This was the story of the defense team, who built their case on the defendant's insanity. It was time for the prosecution to have their say. The prosecutor asserted the complete opposite. Nathan Fujita intentionally took the life of his ex-girlfriend Lorraine Astley because he couldn't handle the final breakup. This wasn't a crime of passion, but a premeditated plan to carry out retribution. On the day of the crime he committed, Nathan called the store where Lorraine worked, trying to reach her, and before that, he called her mobile phone 3 times. One of the calls was caught on surveillance camera as the girl was heading towards the exit of the shopping center after work. The prosecutor insisted that Nathan lured her to his place, knowing his parents wouldn't be home, then led her to his garage where the attack occurred. According to the autopsy report, Lorraine indeed suffered more injuries than just strangulation and a cut to the throat. She had clear signs of defensive wounds. This indicates that the girl resisted. Then, when Lorraine died, Nathan changed his bloodied boots for a pair of sneakers. He got into Lorraine's red Jeep and drove 4+ miles down the road to the town beach parking lot, where he left the car. He threw the car keys into a storm drain. They were found later. Then Nathan walked back home, put Lorraine in his car and drove to a marshy area. He didn't just dump the body in the swamp, he trudged through the mire 33 feet, risking his own life. Apparently, he hoped Lorraine would sink to the bottom, but he miscalculated. Nathan showed no remorse for his actions. One witness saw him that evening, returning home shirtless in his car with the windows down and music blaring from inside. Then the young man took steps to clean up the crime scene and hide evidence. He concealed his wet and bloody shoes and clothes, wiped blood in the garage, and calmly waited for his parents. According to prosecutors, this wasn't a fleeting moment of psychosis, as the defense tried to prove, but a planned attack. A forensic psychiatrist who examined Nathan testified as a defender. He stated that based on professional analysis, Nathan lacked the ability to recognize the wrongness of his actions. Severe clinical depression, recurring brain injuries from playing football, as well as daily use of weed and alcohol, deprived him of this capability. Since there were no previous mentions of abuse in Lorraine and Nathan's romantic relationship, and the young man had never come to police attention, the defense continued to emphasize that this was a one-time lapse, and Nathan was incapable of taking someone's life while of sound mind. All these arguments clashed with the prosecution's repeated attempts to prove otherwise. They also invited a forensic psychiatrist who evaluated the defendant's condition. This doctor stated that Nathan was absolutely of sound mind when he took Lorraine's life. The amount of time and effort spent committing this crime was evidence that he consciously made decisions and understood the consequences of his actions. It was a very emotional trial. By the end of the proceedings, Lorraine Astley's mother sat in quiet grief. Her face contorted when the state medical examiner testified that her daughter likely lived for several minutes, bleeding out, after Nathan Fujita tightened the cord around her neck and ultimately slit her throat. Meanwhile, 20-year-old Nathan hunched over and cried. Apparently, only the realization that retribution for the stolen life was imminent made him understand the full gravity of his misconduct. Nathan's parents were shocked and distressed that their son could do something like this. They had invested much care and love in their boy and had welcomed his girlfriend Lorraine as a beloved daughter. Therefore, they worried even more for the Astley family, who lost their only child because of Nathan. Previously, both families maintained close ties and got along very well, but the weight of the crime now fell on their shoulders too. This was a shared tragedy for the parents. On March 7, 2013, Nathan Fujita was found guilty on all counts. The jury deliberated for a full day before reaching their verdict. The Astley family and the prosecution team finally achieved justice. But what good is it to them when their only child lies in the ground? On the day the sentence was announced, Malcolm, Lorraine's father, walked across the courtroom and hugged Nathan's parents. Knowing that both families had lost what was most precious to them, his action showed the strength of character of this man. Nathan Fujita was sentenced to life in prison. The state of Massachusetts mandates a life sentence without the possibility of parole for those convicted of first-degree murder. Lorraine's parents believed this crime could have been prevented. They dedicated their subsequent lives to spreading information for teenagers on topics of relationship violence and breakup violence. Malcolm and Mary created the Lorraine Astley Memorial Foundation. It's a non-profit organization that promotes healthy teenage relationships and also supports art and community service, two things that were extremely important to Lorraine. In January 2024, the Massachusetts Supreme Court struck down mandatory life without parole for those who were under 20 at the time of their crime. Lorraine Astley's parents worry that the new legislation might allow Nathan Fujita to someday gain freedom. These thoughts break their hearts because they believe the criminal who took the life of an 18-year-old girl should remain in prison. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon. How much can fame go to one's head? An individual's desire to be the focal point of public attention is detrimental, as nothing satisfies the soul as swiftly as the craving for people's approval. Armand's status as a controversial reality TV star and his image as a healer of women's spirits didn't save him. He desperately wanted to become famous, and the guy succeeded brilliantly, though not at all in the way he had envisioned. Armand, born Akshaya Kubiak in 1981 in New Delhi, India, lived there for his first 4 years with his two siblings. His parents were focused on spiritual traditions. His mother, of Asian Indian descent, studied Eastern philosophy and alternative medicine, preferring to live by her own rules, adhering to Buddhist principles. Ash's father was an American of Polish ancestry, born in the USA and graduating college early. His college years coincided with the Vietnam War period. Ash's father opposed bloodshed and participated in various peace rallies. The man always took an activist stance. To avoid being drafted, he voluntarily enlisted in the Peace Corps and was sent to serve in Korea and Japan. During his service in Japan, he met his future wife. They married and moved to India, to New Delhi, where their son, Akshaya Kubiak, was born. Later, the boy changed his name to Ash Armand. Ash was raised on Eastern philosophy from childhood. When he turned 4, the whole family moved to Japan. There, he spent his childhood and youth. Soon after moving, the boy was diagnosed with a severe illness, asthma. The disease greatly impacted Ash's life, making it difficult for him to breathe normally. Additionally, he developed scoliosis, a curvature of the spine. This only exacerbated his asthma attacks, causing pain and pressure on his lungs and making breathing even harder. Due to his illnesses, Ash was frequently hospitalized. He would be treated, discharged, then fall ill again. It was a vicious cycle. Western medicine seemed to offer little help, alleviating his suffering only briefly. It was then that Ash's mother, in an attempt to finally heal her child, turned to Eastern therapy. His treatment focused on meditative breathing and yoga practices, as his mother herself was a yoga instructor. A miracle occurred. The asthma began to gradually subside, his breathing normalized, and the boy's overall well-being significantly improved. Ash was overjoyed, as he had lost hope of ever living a normal life with such a condition. Eastern philosophy also became a huge part of his life. Throughout his childhood, Ash's family traveled extensively. They spent most of their time in Eastern countries and in the United States, his father's homeland. During their travels, Ash's parents met various interesting people who shared the same mindset and even created a kind of international community. It included many educated people from around the world, scientists, artists, poets, doctors, and academics of all kinds. They gathered together and practiced the teachings of Tantra. In Buddhism, Tantra translates as connection or sequence. It's an integral part of Vajrayana, associated with the practice of liminal states between death and the next birth. Tantra is understood as a practice of achieving the final result, the fruit. Sessions are usually conducted under the guidance of an experienced guru mentor. Ash's parents, along with their acquaintances, sought to use a wide range of experiences, mental and physical energy, to achieve enlightenment. Their teachings also placed a strong emphasis on intimate relationships. The community practiced Tantra to interweave the spiritual and physical. Ash spent much of his childhood surrounded by such people. He had to sit and listen to things far beyond a child's understanding. He was subjected to harsh physical punishments more than once when he did something wrong. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. Ash and his brothers were also sent to a training camp in Kyoto, Japan, which was based on a horse breeding ranch. The camp's leader was a bitter, alcoholic farmer who constantly berated the attendees for any misconduct. His parents believed this would toughen their son's character more quickly. So Tantra teachings and frequent physical discipline accompanied Ash throughout most of his childhood. This unusual environment negatively impacted the young man's later life. Unsurprisingly, in his teenage years, Ash decided to break away from this group and build his life by his own rules. He wanted to work in Chinese medicine and continue what his mother had begun teaching him as a child. Ash dropped out of school at 16 and went to study the traditional discipline of Qigong. This involved numerous meditations, bodywork, healing through breathing techniques, and medicinal herb practices. He also studied Zen Shiatsu, a form of massage combined with philosophy. For most of his 20s, Armand worked as a massage therapist. He traveled worldwide, conducting sessions in Miami, Thailand, Costa Rica, Europe, and India. Wherever he went, he tried to learn something new, taking with him a piece of different cultures to later apply in his practice. He even trained a bit in martial arts like Muay Thai. Around this time, he also became actively involved in the psychedelic trance community. Ash attended events where hundreds of people gathered in forests, consumed prohibited substances, and swayed to electronic trance music. Armand enjoyed such gatherings, feeling happy and free, something he lacked so much in childhood. Through such events, Ash had his first serious relationship, which resulted in an unplanned child. Neither the mother nor the father was ready to become a family, so they soon parted ways. But Ash continued to care for the baby and provide financial support. It was upon becoming a father that Ash realized he needed to change professions and build a career in something else. Massage therapy didn't provide him with a stable income, as he now needed to support not only himself, but also help his son. So Ash decided to become a model. He moved to New York, USA, and joined Ice Models Agency, where he achieved some success. The modeling business provided Ash with a different kind of income, but it was all no more than a game, episodic and with unstable earnings. By then, Ash had already turned 30. He realized that his modeling career could end at any moment, so it wasn't something to rely on. However, in 2011, he was contacted by a man named Garen James. He was a successful businessman who had accidentally seen Ash's online modeling profile and liked this guy. The businessman thought Ash would be perfect for the role of a male escort. The fact was that Garen James managed his own companionship company called Cowboys for Angels. Evaluating Ash's unconventional appearance, he decided he would be ideal for this work. He essentially needed attractive men who would keep lonely, wealthy ladies company. Escorting is primarily about companionship, with intimate relations with clients always being a personal choice for both parties. Male escorts are paid for their time, and how they spend it is not important. The scope of duties for male escorts is vague and stereotypical. The main clients of male escorts are often thought to be elderly and wealthy women, but this too is just a stereotype. The demand for male escorts is not as high as for female escorts, as clients more often seek female company. When Garen James approached Ash, Ash wasn't even aware such a business existed. He wasn't sure if he could do it, but decided to give it a try. Firstly, his modeling career had come to a logical end. Secondly, this job could indeed become a good opportunity for earnings. Ash was looking for something new, so why not take a risk? If he didn't like it or something didn't suit him, he could leave at any time. After making his decision, Armand packed his belongings and headed to Las Vegas, where he lived for the following years. He enjoyed working in the escort business. He even participated in a podcast where he discussed the peculiarities of his new profession, as well as the reality show in which Ash eventually took part, and which made him quite a well-known figure. Ash shared that his clients came from various social strata. Some were highly influential ladies, others were ordinary women tired of loneliness or wanting to make an impression in company. With some clients, Ash continued to meet when they visited Las Vegas on business. They enjoyed having fun with an attractive man of Eastern appearance, having a wild time, or simply having him around as a bodyguard. Sometimes, after his contract work ended, they would arrange passionate dates. Ash's services were quite expensive. $800 for 2 hours, $3,000 for an overnight date, and $25,000 for a whole week. So this was exactly the job Ash had dreamed of. Officially, the company had no right to provide intimate services, as that would be illegal. Therefore, whether an employee of Cowboys for Angels would have a night of passion depended solely on him. The main goal was to leave the client satisfied so that next time she would again seek services from their firm. At least, that's how Ash Armand described his work. A few months after he joined the escort firm, in 2012, Ash was offered to participate in the controversial erotic American reality show Gigolos. At that time, the third season was about to begin. The series featured men from escort services or gigolos, hence the show's name. The very first season, which aired in 2011, sparked heated discussion among viewers and was dubbed one of the most scandalous TV projects. Several states initiated legal proceedings regarding the legality of such filming, but the creators managed to prove the show's legitimacy. Filming took place in Las Vegas. Garon James worked as a creative consultant on the series and insisted that producers hire Ash even after he failed the audition. James knew Ash needed money. He had to support his son. Moreover, the businessman thought Ash would shine when he actually appeared on the show, and his premonitions didn't fail him. All the men participating in the reality show were employees of the escort agency Cowboys 4 Angels, where Ash worked. That's why he received an invitation to participate. The essence of the show was that viewers observed the lives of 5 gigolos, their daily activities, and interactions with clients. Although it was called reality, the script was written in advance. Each of the 5 men had a specific role and character traits they were supposed to portray in the series so that the public would be interested in watching different characters. For example, a macho guy or a loner. And each participant had to focus on this element of their personality. Ash was invited to participate in the show as a guy who meditates and explores Zen. He was supposed to portray a spiritual healer, be calm and peaceful. This persona suited Ash like no other. His exotic appearance, long hair, tattooed, toned body. All this made Ash a real star of the controversial series. The reality show Gigolos ran for a total of 6 seasons. The series featured numerous nude scenes and erotic content. Men and women in the show engaged in intimate acts in front of millions of viewers. However, all of this was staged, as the show didn't feature real clients, but actresses who agreed to play these roles. This certainly led to questions about the show's legality. But since the series had nothing to do with real life and everything was fabricated, it managed to exist for quite a long time. As the Gigolos show developed over the years, Ash started earning substantial amounts of money from it. His profile expanded, and he began to gain many followers on social media. The number of people following him on the series grew more and more, and they started to admire and idolize him. Ash even had a small group of followers, similar to a cult. They created fan pages for him on social media and professed their love in various ways. But as Ash gained popularity and his number of followers increased, his personality began to change. He craved fame more and more, but at the same time was very insecure. Ash felt he wasn't good-looking enough, that other men on the show looked better, that they had more muscular bodies, so Ash decided to start taking steroids to gain body mass. His efforts led to results. Ash became even more masculine. His muscles literally bulged under his clothes. Along with this, his ego soared, inflating along with his body. He became incredibly smug and arrogant. Ash looked great and felt he could do whatever he pleased. He started partying, attending numerous celebrity events in Vegas. He began to truly immerse himself in this world of bohemia and date many different women, mostly social media models or adult film stars. At this point, Ash also started drinking heavily and frequently, using prohibited substances and experimenting with his health. This was the complete opposite of who Ash was before the reality show. The simultaneous consumption of excessive amounts of alcohol, steroids, and recreational drugs transformed him from a caring, easygoing, cheerful person into a nervous, bitter, and aggressive individual. Ash developed a tendency towards violence. His dark side began to emerge in large crowds. For instance, at celebrity parties, he often got into fights with other guests over trivial matters. He also had several run-ins with the law. He was arrested multiple times for driving under the influence. Ash even spent some time behind bars. Throughout this period, Ash continued to lose his sanity and chase fame at all costs. He then turned his attention to YouTube and decided to become a fitness YouTuber. The man created his own channel called Armand and started uploading fitness videos there. However, this wasn't standard fitness. He mainly focused on exercises designed to enhance lovemaking, increase the duration of sexual intercourse, and diversify intimate sensations. Ash taught what he skillfully mastered himself. Additionally, he discussed in his videos which foods to consume to boost libido and enhance erection. He called his online workouts bedroom training. In reality, Ash was simply trying to play the role he had in the Gigolo's reality show. Some of his videos indeed garnered millions of views. It could be said that he achieved some success on his YouTube channel. But for Ash, this was still not enough. He wanted more and now turned his attention to social media, where he began posting many diverse photos. As time went on, his content became increasingly explicit. Ash started chasing likes and views and came up with more ways to increase his own fame. The man even appeared in a couple of adult films and created an adult website, but none of this became popular. In 2016, the Gigolo show was canceled, and Ash's income dropped sharply. Usually, people who gain fame through TV programs become famous very quickly, but they're also quickly forgotten once they disappear from screens. Due to the sudden drop in popularity, Ash returned to his work at the escort company, but even here, he was mainly approached by reality show fans who remembered him and wanted to meet in real life. Eventually, even the flow of true admirers of his unique talent and mysterious spiritual healer image dried up. Over the next few years, Ash simply spent the money he had earned from the Gigolos series. But even this soon began to dwindle because he never thought about saving it. Ash nearly went bankrupt and lost all his clients. The year 2020 arrived. Ash's age was rapidly approaching 40. He was still living in Las Vegas, now with a girlfriend named Lisa. Little is known about her, as the next stage of Ash's unfortunate fame fell to another of his girlfriends, Herline. Herline Kaur-Dulai was 29 when she met 38-year-old Ash Armand. The girl was a college graduate with a degree in biological sciences. Her parents had emigrated from India to the United States, so Herline grew up in California and was the youngest of 3 siblings. Herline's father was an aerospace engineer, and her mother had 2 master's degrees in different fields. Therefore, they wanted all their children to receive higher education. With her shiny black hair, big brown eyes, and sparkling smile, Herline always attracted attention from the opposite sex, but she never took advantage of this. In the family, the girl was also a favorite and got the nickname Happy Herline for her cheerful, mischievous nature. She was always smiling and found a way to make everyone around her smile. Noisy and constantly joking at home, Herline was very modest and quiet among strangers. The girl was deeply attached to her close ones and those she loved and was very family-oriented. For example, when her older sister left for college, Herline hid in the closet and cried all day. Herline never went to the zoo because she couldn't bear to see animals in cages. A sweet, caring, homely girl who first arrived in Las Vegas in 2017 to attend university initially felt uncomfortable, but gradually adapted to the rhythm of life in this city and began to find a lot of interesting things in it. Herline called her parents and sisters every day, sometimes more than once. Herline experienced vivid emotional surges for any reason, whether positive or negative. According to a friend, such strong emotions were more indicative of hidden insecurity. She was very beautiful, but for most of her life felt out of place. As time passed in Vegas, Herline felt freedom. To overcome emotional and physical insecurity, the girl joined a close-knit fitness community, a gym that positioned itself as a life-changing institution promoting unity and self-development. She wanted to try something new and interesting. Under the guidance of a personal trainer, Herline lost almost 18 kilograms in the first 30 days, although gym sessions started easily for her. During her first workout with club owner Nick Lewis, she was so nervous that when he left her alone for a few minutes, he returned to find her sitting in a corner of the room, shaking like a leaf. When asked what happened, the girl explained to him that she often had unbearable headaches due to a tumor, so she needed to be in the dark. In reality, whether Herline had cancer is unclear. In 2019, she told a small audience in the fitness community that she had battled a brain tumor and even underwent chemotherapy. However, there was no exact confirmation of her illness. Friends also said different things. And according to her sister, Herline never told her family about a tumor, only complained of frequent headaches. Whatever her health problems were, despite the difficult start, the gym quickly became a refuge for the girl. Subsequently, Herline achieved amazing results and got her body in excellent physical shape. The gym practically turned her life around, and Herline decided to try herself as a fitness instructor. She started a training program for youth, and she enjoyed the work, opening her up even more and giving her confidence in her own abilities. Just a few months later, Herline stopped working as a trainer at the fitness club. Unexpectedly for everyone, she fell out of love with this occupation, as she expressed it, and plunged into another depression. The girl continued to struggle with her mental health issues when Armand appeared in her life. In May 2020, the man accidentally discovered Herline Dulai's photo on social media. The dark-eyed beauty, with a radiant smile in the photo, immediately caught his eye, and he sent her a greeting message. Despite bouts of depression, Herline couldn't ignore this man's message. The 38-year-old Ash stood out with an impressive figure. He looked as if he had stepped off the cover of a romance novel, thanks to his long hair, six-pack abs, and sculptural physique enhanced by steroids. Tattoos added mystery and accentuated his bulging muscles. Ash was stunningly handsome. They had never communicated before this moment, and although in her first reply message Herline refused to meet the man, he was incredibly persistent. Eventually, they agreed to arrange a date, and from that first day, they began communicating daily. In a matter of weeks, their relationship transformed from ordinary friendship into something much more intimate and passionate. However, the girl didn't tell her family anything about Ash, although she called them more than once a day. Therefore, what eventually happened came as an incredible shock to the family. By the time Herline met Ash, he was a man whose time as a reality TV star was in the past and who was still involved in escorting. He was fired from the Cowboys 4 Angels agency in 2019 because he no longer represented the brand properly. Instead of emphasizing the importance of clients in every way, Ash mostly talked about himself. At the time, Ash lived with his teenage son and Lisa in a 2-story condominium near the Las Vegas Strip. The boy's mother lived on the East Coast. Ash continued to tell his new love that he wanted to be with her every day of his life. Meanwhile, he would go home to his son and girlfriend. So it's unknown whether Herline and Lisa knew about each other's existence at the very beginning. Gradually, the man began to fill Herline's head with his grandiose ideas and plans. He still dreamed of becoming famous, truly successful, and very rich. And now Ash wanted to involve Herline, who had a very seductive appearance, in all of this. Ash dreamed of creating a joint business. He fantasized about launching his own TV show and a dating app. Ash wanted to teach men how to attract the woman they liked, how to ask her out on a date, and how to please her in bed. Ash came up with more and more extravagant ideas, of which he already had a great many. He craved success, but all his plans remained unrealized. In reality, he lacked the drive and motivation to actually follow through. But in the eyes of the enamored Herline, he looked almost like a genius. At least, she listened to his opinion. Ash also convinced the girl to undergo alternative treatment for her brain tumor, which she believed was cancer. And Herline began taking snake venom. Then the couple went to Utah for a spiritual retreat, during which Herline was able to work through some long-standing psychological trauma. Upon returning from Utah, a month after starting his relationship with Herline, Ash broke up with Lisa, saying he no longer loved her. She was completely stunned and heartbroken, but since she had nowhere else to live, she continued to stay with Ash. Many people who knew about Ash's obsession with his own appearance wondered what attracted him to Herline. She was very different from the women he usually dated. Ash preferred to associate with incredibly popular social media models with millions of followers. Herline, on the other hand, only created an account because it was necessary for the gym. Some friends thought their shared Indian roots brought them closer. Others believed that the girl's family was very well off financially, which interested the bankrupt man. Whatever the case, their romance was gaining momentum. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video, it's really important. On July 15, 2020, Ash picked up Herline from the gym, and they went to his home. At that time, his teenage son had gone to visit his mother on the East Coast. Only his former girlfriend Lisa remained in the apartment. That day, Ash was acting very strangely. He told Lisa that Herline was surrounded by some terrible dark energy, and he had to remove it. Then he asked his ex-girlfriend to leave them alone. Lisa thought this was just another of Ash's fabrications. She saw Herline, who was smiling all the time, and it didn't seem like the girl was enveloped in gloomy energy. Lisa also heard her talking to her family, laughing, joking, and being quite happy. Not understanding the situation, she nevertheless left the house, deciding to ignore it and attributing her ex's behavior to his latest quirks. Lisa stayed the night at her friend's place to avoid interfering with the couple and to avoid seeing how happy they were. When Ash and Herline were alone, they went up to the bedroom, took psychedelic substances with them, lit candles, and began praying together. They were supposed to have a relaxing spiritual evening, but at some point during the night, things went terribly wrong. On August 16, 2020, at 10:23 a.m., a 911 emergency call was received. The man's voice on the other end of the line sounded completely confused. He said it would sound crazy because it was crazy, but next to him lay a woman's corpse. Armand, for it was him, began incoherently telling the dispatcher some very strange things about no longer being in this reality. And when he opened his eyes, he saw a person next to him. There was a struggle, and Ash temporarily lost his mind. A few minutes later, police burst into Ash's apartment. They quickly surveyed the downstairs area and immediately went up to the main bedroom. There, they found the apartment's owner attempting CPR on a woman lying on the floor, guided by the emergency operator. The entire room presented a horrific scene. Herline was completely unrecognizable. The girl's face was black and blue and swollen, her tangled hair stained with blood. Her ear was one big bruise. Her body was covered in candle wax, as was an open suitcase lying at her feet. 2 candles stood near the body, their surfaces showing bloody handprints. Next to the suitcase lay a black shirt and a ceramic figurine, also spattered with dark liquid. The patrol officers ordered the man to step aside so they could take charge. When Ash was asked how the girl received all these injuries, he explained that a verbal altercation had broken out between them. At some point, Herline attacked him. He was merely defending himself. It was self-defense. The arriving medics tried to find any signs of life, but there were none. The death of 29-year-old Herline was pronounced at the scene. Ash was immediately arrested, and police searched his apartment. Inside the washing machine, they found bloodstains and bloodied clothes. Bloodstains were also visible on the bathroom vanity, which someone had tried to wash away with water and a blood-soaked towel. When police examined Ash for injuries, all they found was a small cut on the middle finger of his left hand and blood that got on him when he was performing CPR on Herline. No scratches, no bruises, nothing indicating an attack. Herline's body was taken to the forensic laboratory for an autopsy. The pathologist's report revealed the true state of the girl before her death. Her body was covered in bruises and contusions. Her mouth was completely battered, gums torn to shreds, and teeth knocked out. Fragments of them were even found in her stomach. Some of her blood had entered her lungs. Herline also had a broken neck and rib. According to the expert's report, the cause of death was blunt force trauma with associated strangulation. Psychoactive substances, caffeine, and alcohol were detected in her system. However, friends later insisted that she didn't even dabble in marijuana, let alone anything more serious. This was a brutal, sadistic attack. No self-defense would involve inflicting such numerous injuries. Armand was immediately charged with intentional homicide. The parents tried to reach Herlin all day long. They were worried because such behavior was uncharacteristic of their daughter. In the evening, the mother attempted to dial the number again. Finally, someone answered. What the woman heard next made her collapse to the floor. The coroner responded to the call, informing her that Herlin had passed away after being beaten by her boyfriend. Arranging a funeral during a pandemic is no easy task. Herlin's older sister, Armand, who was 8 months pregnant, had to handle it. She felt she needed to stay strong for her parents. Armand transported the body across state lines. Herlin's face was so severely disfigured that the family had to hire a restoration specialist because the coroner couldn't manage the deceased's injuries. The expert had to fly in from Missouri to perform a 15-hour reconstructive procedure. Meanwhile, Ash denied any responsibility for his girlfriend's death. He continued to insist it was self-defense. His lawyer called Ash's former employer, Armando Garon James, head of Cowboy for Angels, asking him to finance Ash's court defense, but he refused. That's when Ash's mother posted a request on a website usually used for collecting donations for crime victims, asking for help to raise money for her son's legal defense. She wrote that Armand was unjustly accused of a terrible crime and without competent defense, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. One July morning, a very sick young woman died in his home. Ash called emergency services to save his girlfriend. The 911 operators instructed him over the phone on how to perform emergency CPR, which he did until medics arrived. Unfortunately, she didn't survive. Armando's family indeed behaved as if he were an innocent person, as if it had all been an accident. But Herlin's injuries weren't the result of an accident. Worst of all, this defense campaign raised several $1,000s. The amount was, of course, dozens of times less than requested, but there were still people who believed in Ash's innocence. Friends and family adored him. Despite all the facts, they simply couldn't believe that Ash could be cruel to his beloved girlfriend. The man's friends thought he was incapable of violence in any form and hadn't shown aggression towards anyone in word or deed for the past 20 years. It seemed as if they hadn't communicated with Ash for the last 20 years. There was also a fan who created a social media account supporting Ash. Some users wrote there about how sweet, spiritual, and peaceful he was. They really couldn't imagine how a character from a popular reality show portraying a spiritual healer could violently assault a girl. People actually thought Ash was like that in real life, apparently not realizing that the series was scripted. They urged others to advocate for his immediate release, but the most surprising thing is how many women publicly supported Ash, despite the fact that the crime he was accused of was femicide. Most likely, people simply didn't want to believe that a man who had spent his entire life creating an image of a compassionate, sensitive healer of women was actually capable of the most horrible crime imaginable against a woman. In September 2021, on his lawyer's advice, Armand pleaded guilty, and in December of the same year, he appeared before a judge for sentencing. For beating a girl to death while under the influence of controlled substances, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. What actually happened that night is still unknown. There was speculation that Ash was performing an exorcism, believing for some reason that dark negative energy surrounded Herlin. The ritual might also have been aimed at becoming more popular, offering a sacrifice to unknown forces for his benefit. This version was supported by the fact that candles were placed everywhere, creating a ritual atmosphere. Candle wax was also found on the girl's body. Psychedelic substances caused him to hallucinate. It's possible that Ash saw a demon instead of Herlin and was fighting with it. But this in no way justifies the criminal who, in the most terrible manner, cut short the life of a sweet, caring, loving young girl. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon. What happens to individuals when their own mother doesn't love them? Larry Ray spent his entire life trying to earn the approval of the woman who gave birth to him. Unfortunately, this pursuit led to a regrettable outcome. Today's story is about an individual who decided to establish a cult centered around himself. Whether it was due to a difficult childhood or a persistent desire to prove something to his mother remains uncertain. In this narrative, several people's lives will never be the same again. Lawrence, or Larry Ray, was born in 1959 in Brooklyn, New York. Later, a younger brother named Carl joined the family. Larry's parents divorced shortly after the second child's birth, and the boys moved in with their maternal grandparents. Larry's childhood was dreadful. At the age of 6-7, he endured abuse from his grandfather. The grandmother knew about the situation, but acted as if it were normal and made no attempt to stop her husband. Instead, she physically and verbally abused Larry for the slightest offenses, using a whip. This wasn't the only punishment the boy faced. Larry didn't even have a bed. He was forced to sleep on the wooden floor. The grandson was also forbidden from opening the refrigerator, and he often went hungry. However, Larry's younger brother, Carl, was raised like a true prince, despite living in the same house. Everyone adored Carl. He was the favorite, had the most comfortable bed, and round-the-clock access to any food. He was never insulted or punished. Due to this stark difference in upbringing, the two brothers were set against each other. The grandparents made it clear that Carl was the favorite. Larry, understandably, grew up resenting his brother throughout his childhood. Given his young age, he didn't realize that it wasn't Carl's fault at all. Larry's mother was well aware of what was happening to her children, but did nothing about it. In fact, she fully supported her parents in their belief that Larry deserved such treatment. His own mother despised him. The issue was that she had become pregnant with her first child when she was still a teenager herself. The baby's birth had completely disrupted her life, and the woman blamed Larry, an innocent infant, for everything. The mother resented Larry, utterly neglected him, and did not love him. This is why she supported everything that happened in her parents' home. One night, Larry fell severely ill. He developed a high fever and started coughing badly. His wheezing sounds woke up the grandmother. The elderly woman became angry that the boy was keeping everyone awake with his loud, unpleasant noise. She grabbed Larry by the hair, dragged him outside, and locked the door. This happened in the middle of winter. Larry, sick and wearing only pajamas, nearly froze to death. He had to be hospitalized. Fortunately, he recovered. When the boy's father learned how he was being treated in his ex-mother-in-law's home, the man took his son from his mother's custody and allowed him to live with him. So Larry spent the remainder of his childhood in his father's house under much better conditions than under the care of his grandparents. As he grew older, the young man enlisted in military service but left after just 19 days. However, he continued to maintain contacts with prominent military officials, including Marine General Charles Pittman and retired Marine Commandant General James L. Jones. When Larry turned 19, he made a decision that indicated his terrible childhood hadn't left him unscathed. For some reason, he returned to his heartless mother. He chose to live near her and dedicated his entire life to winning the love and approval of this woman. Everything Larry did in his adult life was an attempt to impress his mother. Without a college education, Larry somehow managed to secure a job as a stockbroker on Wall Street. His difficult childhood had taught him to find a way out of any situation. This was indeed a respectable job that paid very well. Larry gained money and acquaintances with some highly influential people. Throughout his life, the young man sought the respect he hadn't received in childhood and wanted to make his mother proud, but his mother didn't care. Then the young man bought an expensive Mercedes car and lost excess weight, getting himself into excellent physical shape. However, even this failed to impress his mother, who tried to belittle all his achievements. Instead of talking about his accomplishments, she praised Carl and saw Larry only as a competitor. All these issues with his mom and the attempt to gain respect for himself played a crucial role in the young man's future life. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. As he approached 30, Larry settled down and started his own family. He met a woman named Teresa, who became his wife. They had 2 beautiful daughters, Talia and Ava. When Larry's children were born, his career began to develop rapidly. He switched from his Wall Street job to a position as a financial advisor for very wealthy and influential people in high positions. These included politicians, business owners, top military officials, and some rather questionable individuals with mafia connections. One member of the Genovese crime family even attended Larry's wedding. During this period of his life, in the mid-90s, Larry earned a lot of money, opened several bars and nightclubs in New Jersey, and befriended Rudolph Giuliani, New York City's mayor at the time, and Bernard Kerik, New York's police commissioner, who had connections to President George Bush himself. He trained and rode motorcycles. Larry's list of acquaintances included many influential state figures. He even began consulting for the CIA on certain matters. Then he worked in Russia for a while, where he befriended Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev's interpreter and arranged a dinner meeting for him with a U.S. representative. Larry was also acquainted with famous actor Robert De Niro. During Gorbachev's visit to the United States, Larry allegedly introduced the actor to Mikhail Sergeyevich. How did a boy who grew up in harsh conditions manage to achieve something in this life? How did he manage to infiltrate some of the most influential offices in the world? How could Larry work as a financial advisor without a proper education? There are no answers to these questions. But all this clearly characterized Larry as someone capable of speaking so smoothly that people believed him. However, unfortunately, his successful career didn't last long. Everything went awry. By the late 90s, Larry had become incredibly bold and self-confident. He considered himself invincible because he had made friends in influential positions and hoped that in case of any failure, these friends would protect him. But the world doesn't work the way Larry thought. Where power and big money are involved, everyone is out for themselves. None of the high-ranking individuals were willing to risk their careers for someone like Larry. Nevertheless, confident in his abilities, Larry got involved in a mafia financial fraud scheme. He was engaged in something like illegal stock trading, insider information, and so on. At some point, even this seemed insufficient, and he decided to become an FBI informant. In other words, Larry was working for both sides simultaneously. He conducted business with the mafia, while earning a lot of money, and informed the FBI about criminal group activities. However, he was passing false information to the intelligence agency. But even here, Larry tried to take advantage. He complained to his superiors that mafia members had started threatening him as an informant. The FBI installed a $10,000 security system in Larry's home. This man hoped that in case of the arrest of criminal organization members, he could protect himself, as he was allegedly leaking information. Larry's arrogance was simply off the charts. He was confident that playing both the FBI and the mafia would easily go unpunished. But he miscalculated, and his plan didn't work. As soon as it was discovered that Larry was playing for both sides, he was immediately arrested. Naturally, Larry, in complete panic, turned to his influential friends and politicians, the police commissioner, and other government officials, begging them to vouch for him. But all the significant figures turned away at once, unwilling to tarnish their own reputations with questionable friends. Eventually, Larry was forced to take a plea deal. He managed to avoid prison, receiving only 5 years of probation. But due to his criminal record, His life and reputation were ruined. Larry was most offended by his friend Bernard Carrick, the police commissioner, who didn't intervene and save him from arrest. Larry's problems didn't end there. His family life couldn't be called happy either. All this time, Larry had been unfaithful to his wife. He had a long-standing girlfriend whom he kept close for several years. Even worse, he offered his girlfriend to colleague politicians and influential people as payment for services. Larry completely controlled her life, tracking all her movements. If she did anything against his rules, it had serious consequences. Larry punished her both physically and verbally. The girlfriend tried to leave Larry several times, but he threatened to send her explicit photos to her parents. She realized that Larry would stop at nothing. When his wife found out about his long-term affair and what he had been doing, she immediately filed for divorce. This happened almost at the same time his career fell apart. Misfortune never comes alone, because after some time, Teresa, the ex-wife, entered into a relationship with Larry's brother Carl. This was, of course, a strange decision for the woman, but such was reality. Larry was furiously angry because he hated his brother who had ruined his childhood, and the man began a slanderous campaign against his ex-wife. Both daughters were under Teresa's custody. Larry decided to tarnish his ex-wife's name and destroy her reputation, just as his life had been ruined. Deeply offended, the man created several websites and blogs where he published quite eloquent accusations that Teresa mistreated the children, which wasn't true. Larry also began brainwashing the children, turning them against their own mother. He told Talia and her sister Ava how terrible a person Teresa was, how she had abused them in childhood. Although nothing of the sort had ever happened, at least the girls themselves didn't remember it. The older daughter, Talia, began to slowly believe her father and resent her mother, especially now that Teresa was dating her uncle Carl. Larry Ray was one of the most experienced and skilled manipulators the world had seen, so he easily managed to convince his daughters of his righteousness. When Talia expressed to her mother that she didn't like her romance with Uncle Carl, Teresa, in response to her emotions, slapped her daughter. It was precisely this explosive reaction from the woman that led her children to believe their father's tales. As a result, Talia became completely disillusioned with her mom and fell under Larry's influence, and he used this to regain custody of the children. One day, when Larry came to his ex-wife's house to visit the girls, he latched onto a casually spoken word by Teresa and began beating her in front of their daughters. The woman was so frightened that she immediately called the police. When law enforcement officers arrived, Larry managed to twist the situation so cleverly that it appeared as if Teresa had been insulting and beating him, not the other way around. The man played the role of a victim very convincingly. And what's worse, Talia, the older daughter, supported his words. At that time, she was 15 years old. The girl told the police that their mom had beaten not only their dad, but also her and her sister. As a result, an investigation began, and Larry received temporary custody of both girls. And this is exactly what he had been aiming for. Over the next few weeks, while the investigation was ongoing, even more lies and accusations were leveled against Teresa. Talia accused her mom of physical violence and harassment. It went so far that she even implicated her grandfather, aunt, and cousin. However, facts showed that these accusations were false. Detectives also spoke with the younger daughter Ava and learned that mom had never laid a finger on or hurt her children. Larry had taught his daughters what to tell the authorities to accuse their mother of unworthy behavior. Eventually, the police realized that this was all manipulation on Larry's part and an attempt to mislead the authorities to gain custody of the girls. Larry's entire story was complete nonsense, so he was ordered to return the children to Teresa's full custody, but Larry refused. Formally, this was considered kidnapping. Since the man was on probation, His unwillingness to return his daughters to their mother resulted in a 6-month prison sentence for him. The younger Ava returned to her mother's house, while the older Talia disliked Teresa so much and sincerely believed the lies her father had fed her that she refused to return. At that time, she was studying in college and lived in a student dormitory. The year 2010 arrived. Larry cycled in and out of prison. There was an incident where he assaulted his girlfriend, covering her mouth and nose, impeding her breathing. Another time, he violated parole by simply not showing up to check in at the police station. In 2010, Larry had just been released from confinement and planned to reunite with his devoted daughter Talia, a college student. At the time, the young woman was studying at Sarah Lawrence College, located on the outskirts of New York City. The school primarily focused on liberal arts and fine arts. During her first year at the institution, Talia made many friends with whom she was very open and felt completely confident in their support. Talia was the leader of her group, so the other students listened to her. More than anything in the world, the young woman loved talking about her father, Larry Ray. She would bring him up at every opportunity. According to Talia, Larry was the most wonderful father in the entire world. He had worked on Wall Street, associated with many influential people, and was currently in prison on false charges. Talia's friends were truly impressed because the young woman praised Larry like some kind of Superman. She confided in secret that the government had set her father up because he knew too much. Talia tried to portray him as a man who had challenged high-ranking officials. In the fall of 2010, the young woman entered her second year of college and found dormitory housing on campus with a group of friends. It was around this time that Talia received a call from her father in prison, informing her that he would soon be released and urgently needed a place to stay. The daughter, who revered her father, immediately offered the college dormitory. She convinced Larry that they had many rooms, so her friends wouldn't mind his presence. Of course, it was a rather odd decision for a parent to settle into a block with his daughter and a crowd of other college students. But Larry apparently wasn't bothered by this at all. Talia's roommates didn't object either. They were curious to meet such a distinguished person as Larry Ray, as his daughter had portrayed him. Besides, they thought it would be temporary. After being released from confinement, Larry moved into the college dormitory where Talia and all her friends lived. He felt quite comfortable staying on the couch in the common area. The college dormitory was a 2-story building with several rooms housing 8 students. These were 4 young women, Talia, Isabella, Claudia, and Juliana, and 4 young men, Santos, Gabe, Max, and Dan. They were all 19 years old. In reality, Larry had no intention of moving out of the dormitory, as he had found a grateful audience there, ready to listen to his stories from morning till night. The man enthusiastically told the students what an amazing person he was, that he had worked with the government and CIA, had been a negotiator between the Russian and American governments, playing an important role in organizing meetings between representatives of the 2 nations. The students were impressed that such a powerful and important person lived with them and slept on the couch in the shared living room. Besides his nightly self-praise, Larry cleaned the house, cooked a lot, bought groceries, and took the students out to cafes where he treated them to decent meals. The students were immensely grateful to the man for such care. But Larry wasn't doing all this out of good intentions. He was preparing the ground for fulfilling his cherished dream. Larry wanted to gain the students' trust, make them feel indebted, and then start manipulating them in the most terrible way. As soon as the man crossed the threshold of the dormitory, his intellectual games began with people who had just entered adulthood, and these games had devastating consequences. All the students, as one, were charmed by Talia's father and his incredible stories, hanging on his every word, while he continued to fill their heads with a bunch of lies. Larry claimed that the government wanted to catch him, and his life was in danger. That's why he was imprisoned. The fact was that after working with the CIA, Larry knew a lot of secrets about the September 11th disaster, when 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center and many people died. In reality, there are many theories about this, so Larry just used one of them to confuse the sophomores. He assured them that the secrets made him dangerous, and if he started talking, many high-ranking individuals would suffer. So now he was being hunted, wanting to silence him forever. Allegedly, Larry had noticed surveillance on himself multiple times, and once someone from a passing car shot at him but missed. Here, Larry recalled Police Commissioner Bernard Carrick, who refused to intervene when he was arrested, and decided to blame him for all his problems. He told the kids how Bernard had been his friend, but now turned into an enemy wanting to destroy him. Then he dragged in Rudolph Giuliani, the mayor of New York, and even President George Bush. They all supposedly wanted Larry dead because he knew their secrets. Larry's imagination ran wild, and he piled up so much nonsense that any rational person would have doubted the truthfulness of his words. But these were students who weren't interested in politics and state affairs. They heard big names and felt respect for Larry. Naturally, Larry was lying, but only to gain trust and admiration in the eyes of the young people. Moreover, the man showed students photographs where he was in the frame with various famous people, although in reality, the political and business representatives didn't even know who was standing behind them. Larry is a person capable of infiltrating the most influential circles, noticing a camera, and then discreetly positioning himself to get in the frame. Talia, whose mind had been completely washed by her father, supported him in everything. Larry became almost a messiah for this group of college students. He seemed to them an incredibly powerful and intelligent person who rebelled against a corrupt system and fought for a just cause. When the stories about Larry himself ended, he continued to gather the students daily in the common living room and lecture them on things like truth and justice, the nature of the universe, the sun, stars, planets, religion, and the like. Then Larry began taking students for individual lectures where he shared secrets obtained from the CIA. At least that's what he said. Larry taught how to discipline the mind, how to overcome barriers and traumas in one's life to fully unlock potential. This man had no qualifications as a therapist or psychologist. He was making up all the methods from his head. But he knew what bothered young people at this age, so he very skillfully pressed on sore spots. Moreover, he wasn't interested in all the students living in this house. He targeted only those who were easier to manipulate. In their eyes, Larry Ray was the only person capable of helping them understand themselves. The first person Larry focused on was Isabella. He liked her very much. Isabella had entered Sarah Lawrence College on a full scholarship. She had previously attended a Catholic girls' school and was very reserved. Shortly before Larry moved into the dormitory, the girl had gone through a rather difficult breakup with her boyfriend and was now in a depressed state. She was very insecure and kept to herself. Larry's increased attention brought her out of depression. In individual sessions, she poured her heart out to the man, revealing her most intimate and dark secrets and sharing her problems. Larry moved his personal lectures with Isabella to the bedroom. He would lay the girl on the bed, press close to her, stroke her hair, and whisper pleasant things in her ear about how no one would harm his girl. He was about 50 years old, and Isabella was the same age as his eldest daughter. Intimate conversations were followed by intimate relations, and although the girl was old enough to make independent decisions, at that moment, she was too vulnerable to understand what was really happening. Then Larry convinced Isabella to cut off all relationships with her family and friends. He convinced the student that it was her parents who made her so unhappy. They had subjected her to physical and moral abuse in childhood, and he came and saved her. Larry was such a skilled manipulator that Isabella called her mother and father and said she no longer wished to know them, and if they tried to seek meetings with her, she would take her own life. In the end, when the students went home for winter break, Isabella and Talia stayed in the dormitory with Larry. The man arranged with one of his acquaintances to live for some time in his two-room apartment, and he achieved this also through manipulation. And now he observed the students and thought about who else, besides Isabella, to take with him to the apartment. Larry's choice fell on Claudia. In California, Claudia grew up as a smart, creative, and independent girl. However, at that time she was struggling with depression, and Larry offered to help. She also had to participate in individual therapy sessions. Once Claudia began communicating with Larry one-on-one, she truly transformed into a completely different person. She became confident and uninhibited. Later, she announced to everyone that she had schizophrenia, and it was Larry who diagnosed her, despite lacking medical education. Now, Larry Ray's circle of admirers included 3 people: his daughter Talia, Isabella, and Claudia. But the man found even this insufficient. It was then that he turned his attention to the next student, Santos. Like Claudia, Santos experienced mental health issues and also battled depression. Since he saw the positive influence Larry had on his roommates, he too began having individual sessions with the man. Within a week, the young man started pouring out his soul to Larry, revealing his vulnerabilities. Santos shared that he had attempted suicide in high school and was now facing problems again. Around this time, Santos began dating Talia, so he trusted her father unconditionally. The guy didn't notice how he ended up completely at the disposal of the adult man, and then even convinced his neighbor Dan, who had issues with orientation, to seek help from Talia's father. Larry's cult grew by one more person. By that point, Larry had all the students under his control. He continued giving them daily lectures on religion, spirituality, and relationships. When summer break arrived, Larry convinced Claudia, Isabella, Dan, and Santos to stay with him for the summer in his apartment located in New York's Upper East Side. Unfortunately, after that summer, their lives would never be the same, as Larry's cult was gaining strength. The 4 students, along with Talia, moved into the apartment, believing they were doing so of their own free will. But their will had long been broken. The young people didn't notice how they began following first Larry's recommendations, and then his orders. From the first day of living in this apartment, the students fell into absolute dependence on its owner. There were only 2 rooms. Larry and Isabella occupied a separate bedroom, while the other 4 people somehow fit into the living room. Larry also removed locks and door handles in the bathroom so no one would have privacy. He forced everyone onto a strict diet to lose weight and clear their minds. To make everything easier to control, he installed locks on the refrigerator and freezer to prevent theft. Everyone was hungry and couldn't concentrate, which significantly facilitated manipulation. Every morning, the students were woken very early to the same song, then forced to exercise. This resembled more of a military training camp, and Larry said he had been in the army and knew everything about army life. The only thing he forgot to mention was that he had served for just 19 days. Then he made the 5 students sit for hours on his lectures about nonsense. Larry really liked the sound of his own voice, so he could talk long and tediously on various topics. To suppress the will of the young people, Larry began drugging them with prohibited substances. When the students fell into an anxious, paranoid state, he forced them to sit in the living room and reveal their most intimate and dark secrets, desires, and life needs, share intimate fantasies. He questioned them about childhood, psychological traumas, about everything bad that had ever happened in their lives. Larry managed to convince the students that all this happened because of their parents. He invented childhood traumas for them and hammered them into their heads so much that they really began to feel that this had actually happened to them at some point. The result of this psychological processing was a complete refusal to communicate with loved ones. When summer ended, the students didn't return to campus. They continued living in the apartment with Larry and commuting daily to college for lectures. Seeing complete submission, Larry began using it for his own interests. He applied various control techniques, but the main technique became a close relationship with the guru. That's exactly what this power-obsessed person considered himself to be. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video, it's really important. Now in bedroom activities with Larry, Claudia joined Isabella as a companion. Then he sent Isabella to Den so he could discover his true orientation. Larry called this sex education lessons. He observed as the young people engaged in intimate affairs. Sometimes he gave instructions on how to do things. Sometimes he joined in himself. Meanwhile, his 20-year-old daughter slept on the couch in the adjacent room. Larry Ray's cult had existed for about a year when a couple more girls joined. These were two sisters, Yalitza and Felicia Rosario. Like her brother Santos, Yalitza struggled with insecurities and was in a poor mental state. Her brother convinced her to turn to Larry, telling her how wonderful he was and how he helped change his life. After coming to the apartment once, Yalitza stayed. However, Felicia was quite different. She lived in California. This girl was a Columbia University graduate. Having obtained a medical degree, she was about to start an internship at a hospital. She had a vast number of friends. Felicia was confident, cheerful, and active. She was rapidly moving towards success and wasn't a typical victim, as Larry usually sought out. But as soon as he saw this girl once, his eyes lit up. He wanted to get her under his control at all costs. Felicia was quite independent, and she was planning to start work in another state. It wouldn't be so easy to control her, so Larry decided to act in a completely different way. He had to take a wait-and-see approach. Every time Felicia flew from California to New York, he showered her with flowers and expensive gifts. Over time, the girl trusted Larry, who had also helped her sister and brother, and agreed to date him. Larry seemed like the sweetest man in the world, attentive, caring, surrounding her with his love. He lavished her with offerings and compliments, always by her side, and Felicia thought he was the most incredible person she had ever met. As soon as the girl showed reciprocal feelings for Larry, he began telling her that the government was determined to destroy him, that he was being pursued and had already been shot at. And now, since Felicia was his girlfriend, she was in danger too. He could protect her only if she moved to New York and lived with him in the apartment. But as soon as Felicia did this, there was no trace left of the independent, cheerful girl. She also fell completely under the influence of Larry's cult and became his second partner. After all, the leader could have several wives. This is how Larry now referred to Felicia and Isabella. Every night the girls had to spend in bed with the guru, all had to be without clothes. And Felicia and Isabella were obliged to hold Larry's genitals all night. In addition, he sent the female students out onto the street and forced them to sleep with strangers. He recorded all these encounters on video or simply observed the process. If any of the cult members began to resist or didn't follow Larry's orders, the man threatened to publish the filmed material on the internet and send the files to their families. This whole group of students had to be supported somehow. Larry devised a clever scheme. He would daily inspect the apartment, checking for any new marks on the wallpaper or scratches on kitchen pans, then accuse a randomly chosen victim of causing damage. Initially, the students would try to defend themselves, but Larry could spend an entire day angry and pressuring them about it. When their spirit was once again broken, they would confess to things they hadn't done and then have to pay for the alleged damage. These were astronomical sums of money, bills for thousands of dollars. For instance, Santos received such a bill for $50,000 for everything he supposedly damaged. But where could these poor students get the money? Naturally, from their families, whom they had renounced. Larry's young followers, threatening to harm themselves, would ask their parents for large sums. Thus, the Rosario family had to transfer $200,000 to Ray's account to pay off their children's debts to this man. There were three things Larry used to control his subordinates: intimate relationships and the threat of exposing them, money, and physical punishment. If students crossed the line, if they ever broke rules of existence they weren't even aware of, if they ever upset Larry in any way, they were physically punished. The pseudo-guru would simply beat his followers and abuse them in various ways. He forced the guys to wear women's clothes and watch adult films, while making the girls wear diapers and only watch children's TV shows. Larry also created a website offering intimate services. For several years, he forced Claudia to sleep with men for money. Naturally, the girl herself never saw these funds, although a considerable sum had accumulated over the years. After another round of abuse, Dan finally got tired of enduring it and had the courage to leave the ill-fated apartment. Dan was the first person to escape from Larry. Unfortunately, this happened when the guy's psyche was completely shattered. In 2013, the students finished college, and Larry moved them to his stepfather's house in North Carolina. There were Talia, Isabella, Claudia, Yalitza, Santos, and Felicia. After Dan left the cult, Larry feared others might leave too, so he began to turn the young people against each other. There was a group of favored individuals, daughter Talia, Isabella, and Felicia, and a group of bad people, including Santos, Claudia, and Yalitza. Somehow, Larry managed to convince Felicia that her brother and sister were jealous of her and wanted to poison her. Constant arguments and negativity led to many cult followers being hospitalized due to suicide attempts. Information about the abuse of their adult children reached the parents. They repeatedly contacted the police, but unfortunately, law enforcement couldn't do anything because at that time all members of Larry's cult were adults acting of their own volition. Police even visited the house in North Carolina, but the former students assured them that no one was holding them there, and the officers left empty-handed. This madness continued for several years. Larry Ray's cult members moved between different houses until eventually Santos, followed by his sister Yalitza, left their spiritual mentor. They found the strength to leave the man who had humiliated them and completely suppressed their will. Larry's daughter, Talia, unlike the others, was never subjected to harsh treatment. She came and went as she pleased. The girl simply sincerely believed in her father's power and saw nothing wrong with what he was doing. Isabella, Felicia, and Claudia remained loyal to Larry for a long time and remained his puppets, doing everything he said. Claudia worked in escort services against her will for 5 years. In October 2018, she finally refused to sleep with men for money. Larry subjected her to severe punishment, took her to a hotel room, stripped her naked, tied her to a chair, put a plastic bag over her head, and repeatedly cut off her oxygen supply over the next few hours until she lost consciousness. Then he cut off her hair to humiliate her even more. After this incident, Claudia did not return to Larry's care and left the cult forever. From this point, everything began to fall apart. Talia no longer lived with her father. Dan, Santos, and Yalitza had left the man earlier. He was left with his 2 so-called wives, Isabella and Felicia. In 2019, Larry Ray's cult collapsed, helped by an article in New York Magazine. A journalist named Ezra Marcus was a Sarah Lawrence College graduate. During his studies, he encountered rumors about a strange group of students led by an adult man. Ezra was intrigued and began to dig into this story. He interviewed former college students who had lived in the dorm with Larry Ray and also managed to track down former cult members and learn details of the case. Ezra Marcus's article shocked the world, went viral on the internet, and finally prompted authorities to take a closer look at Larry Ray. In February 2020, the house in New Jersey where Larry, Felicia, and Isabella lived was searched by the FBI. Larry was arrested and charged with several crimes, including sex trafficking, physical abuse, extortion, tax evasion, and several financial crime charges. Although Larry was in custody, Isabella and Felicia continued to believe in his innocence and remained loyal to him. Only after some time did Felicia begin to realize the true picture of what had happened. She had to rethink her entire life. Isabella chose to act as an accomplice rather than testify against Larry. In February 2023, Larry and Isabella stood trial. It was then that all the details of the cult were revealed. Many former members testified against Larry. Some video recordings were also made public. Larry was diagnosed with dramatic and narcissistic personality disorder. This man was capable of manipulating and controlling almost any situation he found himself in. Such was the conclusion of the expert psychologist. Lawyers tried to portray him as a victim, an old, sick man, but the jury didn't fall for these tricks. Larry Ray was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. Isabella was found guilty of conspiracy and sent to prison for 4.5 years. She still doesn't talk to her family, believing that they are to blame for all her problems. Larry's older daughter, Talia, was also suspected of conspiring with her father, but she was never charged. Since then, she has completely disappeared from the radar. No one knows where she is, and nothing more is known about her. Former cult members had to rebuild their broken psyches, and it was very difficult. Thanks to their parents and qualified psychologists, they managed to cope with some problems, but their lives, unfortunately, will never be the same again. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon. The initial romance, the cherished boyfriend, the pregnancy, everything appeared to be progressing wonderfully, suggesting a promising future ahead. However, unexpectedly, the main character of this love story vanished without a trace. The young man, the child's father, couldn't fathom that his fairy tale could come to such an abrupt end. As the details of Emily's disappearance began to emerge, the entire Dominican Republic was struck with horror. The Dominican Republic is a nation in the Caribbean, situated on the island of Hispaniola. The country is renowned for its beaches, resorts, and golf courses. However, in 2017, the entire world began discussing the Dominican Republic and its prevailing laws. All this was due to one 16-year-old girl. Emmy Delin Peguero, or Emily as her friends called her, was born on July 12, 2001 in Chenove, a town about an hour's drive from Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. Emily was the youngest child in Adalgiza and Genaro's family. Even as she grew older, her elder siblings continued to treat her like a baby, constantly shielding and protecting her from hardships. Pretty, cheerful, and caring, Emily, with her adorable dimples, dreamed of becoming a lawyer when she grew up. The girl very much wanted to assist people who lacked the means to pay for expensive attorney services. She herself was raised in a low-income household and intended to work pro bono in the future. Emily was extremely kind and always desired to do something beneficial for the world. The Peguero family resided in a small, quaint house with shuttered windows, a flat roof, and a sun-faded butterfly mural on the front wall. Her parents had to work various low-paying jobs to somehow support their family. Despite the lack of luxuries in the girl's life, she was always provided with the most essential things. The family's low income didn't affect her character or mood. Emily studied well, was sociable, and spent a lot of time with her friends and family. She adored applying stage makeup, dressing up in some costume, and performing for her loved ones. All of her parents' financial troubles faded into the background when they watched their youngest daughter dancing and laughing. Emily's family was truly happy, regardless of the difficulties they faced. Her mother and father did everything possible to give their children love and attention, and they succeeded wonderfully at it. When Emily turned 15, she started dating a boy named Marlon Martinez, who was 18 at the time. Although the young man's family lived across the street, he and Emily existed in completely different worlds. The young people had known each other since childhood, and their relationship began as a tender friendship. Marlon was born in the United States, and when he was 8 or 9 years old, his family returned to the Dominican Republic and settled in a large house with a beautiful front yard across the street from Emily. They had a completely different financial status. The boy's parents, his mother and stepfather, were quite well off, so they sent their son to study at a prestigious school outside the town. Marlon Martinez's mother was involved in politics and was quite a well-known figure. At one point, she had even been the mayor of the province. Now the woman held a government position and was responsible for issuing visas and passports, as well as participating in many city campaigns, so she had many useful connections in society. Marlon wielded considerable power at the local level. There were rumors that Marlon illegally assisted with obtaining visas. So many people were indebted to her. She was never held accountable for this because there was always some patron. In reality, Marlon, to be honest, wasn't the most pleasant person. Emily's father had once worked as a private security guard for Marlon and knew firsthand how aggressive and short-tempered this woman could be. For some reason, she decided that having money and power meant she could treat others however she pleased. Marlon considered herself several steps above everyone else and believed she could get away with anything. Due to her malicious nature, the townspeople secretly called her the devil. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. The woman was constantly occupied with politics and career building, so she often needed assistance in caring for her 3 sons, one of whom was Marlon. To avoid hiring a special nanny, she arranged with her neighbor, Emily's mother, to look after the children for a certain fee. Marlon would bring the boys over and then leave for her business. The children from the 2 families quickly became friends through their shared playtime. Sometimes the Martinezes even stayed overnight at the neighbors. This indicated that Marlon greatly trusted Adalgiza, Emily's mother's name, leaving her sons in her care. And despite the social difference, the families were very close. Because of how often Marlon and his brothers visited the neighbor's house, all the children treated each other like family very warmly. While they were little, they played together, but as they began to grow older, they saw each other much less frequently, crossing paths only in passing. And when Emily turned 15 and Marlon 18, they resumed communication. At first, they hung out together and then began dating as boyfriend and girlfriend. Many were shocked by such an age difference because the age of consent in the Dominican Republic is 18, and Emily was considered a minor. The girl's family also didn't approve of this relationship, mainly because of Marlon, the young man's mother. Recently, the woman had gotten into a fight with another neighbor over some trifle, and the people living on the same street disliked the arrogant woman even more. However, regardless of what Marlon's mother was like, he himself was just a regular friendly guy. Adalgiza, one could say, had been involved in his upbringing for several years. Emily's father didn't interfere as he knew how Marlon looked down on those who were poorer. He simply didn't approve of this relationship, but couldn't forbid it either, not wanting to quarrel with his daughter, who was clearly in love. The man just felt uncomfortable due to his neighbor's hot-tempered nature. In 2017, Emily was about to turn 16. Her relationship with Marlon continued, and everything seemed to be going well. But in spring, something shocking occurred. The girl felt slightly unwell and didn't immediately understand what was wrong. Her boyfriend, due to his age, quickly guessed what might have happened. After several tests, their suspicions were confirmed, and Emily realized she was pregnant. This came as a surprise to the young couple. The thing is, termination of pregnancy under any circumstances is prohibited by law in the Dominican Republic. So Emily knew that she would have to give birth to the child one way or another. In the Dominican Republic, a predominantly Catholic country, abortion had been declared a criminal offense. In 2012, prison sentences were introduced for people assisting in these operations, including medical staff, as well as friends and relatives. Emily was still very young. Moreover, she was worried that she didn't have the means to raise a future child, but her boyfriend reassured her. She was afraid to approach her parents, not knowing how her mother and father would react to such news, but there was no point in delaying further. Emily gathered her thoughts and told her sister and mother about the pregnancy. Her father, Genaro, only found out about it 5 months later. One day, during a work break, he came home to have lunch with his family. When the man looked into the kitchen, he saw the tense face of his wife and asked what had happened. Adalgiza shocked him by revealing that their youngest daughter was 5 months pregnant. The man clutched his head and asked how it happened that a child was going to have a child. This news stunned him so much that for the first half hour, he couldn't calm down at all. Finally, pulling himself together, Genaro promised to talk to the future young parents, but asked for time to come to terms with this news. The saddest part was that Genaro learned about his daughter's pregnancy only 9 days before the girl disappeared. They simply didn't have time to sit down and talk as father and daughter. About a week after this, Marlon's stepfather, Roberto, approached Genaro and suggested they gather to discuss the future child's welfare. The man agreed to the meeting, and together with Roberto and Marlon, they had an open conversation. The young man told his girlfriend's father that he intended to take responsibility for this baby and care for Emily. Roberto also intervened and promised to help his stepson as much as possible. This talk somewhat calmed Genaro, but he still couldn't come to terms with the idea that his little daughter would be a mother. The man set a condition that Emily, along with the child, would continue living with her family since she was underage, and both families would take turns caring for the newborn. Genaro still considered Emily a child, and despite the pregnancy, didn't intend to let her go. In the father's opinion, she should still live under his roof, at least until she turned 18. Genaro loved his daughter and would support her in any case. Marlon seemed to agree with this arrangement, and Roberto supported him in this. The only person who was truly unhappy about Emily's pregnancy was Marlon's mother, Marlon. She was not at all satisfied with this state of affairs. She felt her son was making a big mistake. He shouldn't have allowed this child to interfere with his college studies and ruin his bright future. Marlon was also very concerned about her own family's reputation, not wanting people to gossip that the Martinezes had become related to poor people. The woman had turned a blind eye to her son dating this girl, but having a child together was beyond anything she could accept. On August 23, 2017, 16-year-old Emily got up early and prepared to go somewhere. When her mother asked, she explained that Marlon had promised to take her to a doctor's appointment to collect test results. The girl promised to be gone for a very short time, so Adelgiza saw her daughter to the front door and watched as Emily got into her boyfriend's car before they drove away. The woman continued with her usual chores, prepared breakfast, tidied the house, and had already started preparing lunch. It was at that moment she realized her daughter still wasn't home, which was very odd because Emily had promised to return within an hour. If her daughter was going somewhere, she always notified her parents. She would either call or send a message if she was running late, and would always specify when she'd return home. However, for several hours, no one had heard anything from Emily, which caused some concern for her mother. Then, around 11:30, Emily's sister received a text message. The girl wrote that Marlon had left her at a gas station because she decided to meet with her uncle. This message from Emily should have reassured her relatives, but instead, it intensified their worry. Firstly, the girl had never sent text messages before, preferring voice messages. Secondly, which uncle had she suddenly decided to meet with when she hadn't even mentioned it earlier? Thirdly, the tone of the message didn't sound like Emily. All of this seemed very strange and wrong. Adelgiza sent her elder daughter to Marlon's to clarify where Emily had gone. The girl crossed the street and knocked on the door of the neighboring house where the Martinez family still lived. The young man opened the door and began explaining the situation. Allegedly, in the morning when they were heading to the clinic, Emily realized she had mixed up the dates and that her test results wouldn't be ready until Friday. Instead of going home, the pregnant girl asked to be dropped off at a gas station because she had managed to arrange a meeting with her uncle. Marlon agreed. He dropped Emily off at the gas station, gave her some money just in case, and made sure she got into her uncle's car that had pulled up. At least that's what the boy thought, and it was the last time he saw his girlfriend. Adelgiza and her older daughter went to the gas station to ask employees if they had seen where the car with the girl had gone. When the women reached the station, they requested to check the surveillance camera footage. It turned out that neither Emily nor Marlon had been at the gas station that morning. Either the young man had simply confused the name, or he was, for some reason, not telling the truth. However, Marlon still insisted that he had dropped the girl off there. Emily herself wasn't answering calls. Adelgiza didn't waste time and immediately called the police, reporting the disappearance of her pregnant underage daughter. She, along with her other children, began distributing flyers with Emily's photo. The woman wanted her child to return home quickly and didn't want to lose a second. The girl's family didn't initially think she had been abducted by a stranger or that she had gotten into trouble. They were all certain that Marlon had something to do with her disappearance. Moreover, they suspected not the young man himself, but his mother, Marlon. Adalgisa directly told reporters that the Martinez family definitely knew where Emily was, but they refused to say where the girl was. The reason was that Genaro, the missing girl's father, had accidentally stumbled upon a message from Marlon on his daughter's phone where she was trying to convince his son's girlfriend to terminate the pregnancy. Such an important person as Marlon's mother considered herself to be didn't need a child conceived out of wedlock. Emily's parents were convinced that Marlon somehow wanted to get rid of the unwanted pregnancy. These messages were received on August 19, 2017, just 4 days before Emily disappeared. The essence of the messages was that Marlon was offering the girl to end her condition at home. The woman promised to take care that everything would go well. At first, Emily categorically refused, but then, tired of the manipulations, said she would trust the adult, experienced woman. When Genaro reported this conversation, suspicions towards the Martinez family intensified even more. But the most alarming signal was that Marlon, as soon as Emily was officially declared missing, rushed to hire a lawyer. It's not entirely logical to turn to a lawyer if you have nothing to do with the disappearance. When after 24 hours the girl still hadn't shown up, rumors about this case spread throughout the area. And now not only Emily's family, but other townspeople suspected the Martinez family in her disappearance. Genaro, the family patriarch, was very concerned about his girl's fate. He couldn't imagine where and how she had spent that August night. Was she healthy or suffering from pain somewhere? It was a serious and frightening situation. When alone, he couldn't hold back tears of despair, although in public he stayed strong and didn't show his emotions. The man knew that if someone close saw his tears, they would lose hope for a favorable outcome. After the entire community learned about the disappearance of the pregnant girl and the involvement of her boyfriend's family, Marlon and Marlon decided to hold a press conference to refute rumors and prove their innocence. Marlon, having numerous connections, invited several reporters to help quickly dispel the myths associated with her family. The press conference took place in the living room of the Martinez residence. Marlon, Emily's boyfriend, was dressed casually in a regular t-shirt. The young man looked down throughout the interview and was very nervous. It was noticeable how he was shaking. Marlon, on the other hand, was dressed in a formal suit. Her hair was done and she looked quite confident. The ex-mayor of the province took the initiative in the conversation. She had experience speaking in public and carried herself well, but the first questions were addressed to her son. The boy once again recounted the story of how they were driving to the clinic, how Emily realized she had mixed up the dates, how he dropped her off at the gas station, and so on. Then Marlon finally looked at the camera and began to plead for his girlfriend to return home. He said that in their couple, as in most others, there were problems. But in the end, all their loved ones had accepted the unexpected pregnancy and were eagerly awaiting the arrival of the baby. Then he turned his gaze to the camera lens and, barely holding back tears, addressed Emily Peguero. Wherever she was, he said he was waiting for her with open arms. After this, his mother took the floor and stated that all the rumors concerning their family were absolutely untrue, that the Martinezes had nothing to do with Emily's disappearance. Because that morning, Marlon was taking Emily's grandmother to the consulate to process some documents. This woman wanted to emphasize once again how close they were to the missing girl's family and tried to use her trip as an alibi. During the interview, Marlon continued to emphasize how close Emily was to them and how much they loved her. She mentioned that the girl, carrying her grandson in her womb, had already become part of their family, and now they were worried about her no less than the Peguero family. Like Marlon before, Marlon looked directly into the camera and addressed her son's girlfriend, begging her not to make them suffer and to let them know her whereabouts. She even started to choke up while talking about it, and it seemed she was barely holding back tears. Marlon urged anyone willing to ask them and her son any questions they were interested in. They would give an interview to everyone because they had nothing to hide. The press conference organized by Marlon's mother only caused confusion. Many people found it strange and wondered why the Martinezes didn't invite Emily Peguero's family to also address the public. Actions speak louder than words, and most Chenova residents were only convinced that the purpose of the press conference was merely an attempt to justify themselves. There's no smoke without fire. And since rumors had started that the Martinezes were guilty of the girl's disappearance, it must be so. At the conference, both mother and son spoke about Emily in the past tense. This small detail also made everyone think that they knew something about the girl and what had happened to her. The public felt that this was a common case where a rich, influential family simply decided to get rid of a young, poor girl to save their own reputation. In general, instead of dispelling public suspicions, the press conference only added fuel to the fire. Despite the suspicions surrounding Marlon from all sides, he went to the Peguero family's house. Seeing the upset faces of his neighbors, the boy decided to turn himself in to the police, understanding that he would most likely be arrested and interrogated. And on August 26, 2017, Marlon was indeed arrested as the main suspect and sent to a detention center. But the main question, whether Emily Peguero was alive, remained unanswered. Detectives did everything possible to find a trace of the girl, and 5 days after her disappearance, the local police made a breakthrough. On Monday, August 28th, they tracked the geolocation of Emily's phone. The phone last rang in an apartment building in the prestigious San Francisco de Macorís district. There was Marlon Martinez's apartment. While the children lived with their stepfather Roberto in Chenove, their mother often traveled on business and stayed in this apartment. A search of the premises revealed blood splatter on the mattress and several towels with blood stains. These items were sent to the forensic laboratory. Meanwhile, the police questioned potential witnesses. 2 days later, the apartment building's security guard revealed shocking information. The man said that on the day Emily disappeared, August 23rd, he saw on surveillance cameras Marlon carrying a large bag out of the building and loading it into his car. The guard couldn't think of anything better than to call the young man's mother. Marlon came downstairs to personally see the recordings. While watching, the woman clearly became nervous, grabbed her head, and began to scream. And after some time, the video recording disappeared. The guard didn't know where it had gone, but didn't rule out that Martinez could have somehow removed it. Public anger continued to grow, with much of it directed at Martinez's mother. Many saw her as the person behind Emily's disappearance. People who knew what Marlon was like were sure she was covering for her son, using wealth and influence. On the day the guard reported the stolen video recording to the police, Marlon Martinez showed up at the police station and turned herself in to the authorities. Her lawyer insisted she did this only to cooperate with the police, but everyone else thought she was simply anticipating her imminent arrest. During her arrest, a reporter asked her if she was involved in Emily Peguero's disappearance, to which Marlon replied that she was merely protecting her son as a mother. These words struck a chord with many people. It seemed she, as a mother, had done away with someone else's daughter, and worse yet, with a girl who was carrying her grandchild. Finally, all the puzzle pieces started falling into place. August 30th, 2017, was an extremely tense day for the detectives. First, they learned about incriminating footage from a security guard. Then Marlon Martinez turned herself in to the authorities. Later that same day, her son Marlon confessed to the police. The Peguero family's worst fears were confirmed. The young man admitted that Emily was no longer alive. He told investigators that he had left her body at a local dump. This information shocked not only the girl's loved ones but the entire community. People who had been moved by the story of the young pregnant girl were still clinging to hope that Emily might be alive. But the boyfriend's confession shattered their hearts. Police officers, along with Marlon, headed to the local dump to search for the girl's body. As soon as they stopped near the dump, the patrol car was surrounded by enraged townspeople. People wanted to express their thoughts to the criminal face to face. Officers even had to fire warning shots to disperse the crowd. Law enforcement didn't risk letting Marlon out of the car. They spent over 8 hours sifting through trash and waste, but found nothing. The next morning, Chenov residents expressed their discontent by blocking roads at 9 a.m. and demanding that Marlon stop toying with the Peguero family's emotions and tell the police where he hid Emily's body. They burned tires, threw stones, and threatened to destroy the Martinez home. Police even had to take measures to restore order. The prayers of parents and concerned townspeople were answered because later that day, a body was discovered in Espaillat province, about an hour's drive from Chenov. A flood of messages from various people filled Emily's older brother's phone messenger. They all wrote that a body of an unknown girl had been found in the neighboring province. Police, the Peguero family, and other relatives headed to the scene to finally learn what happened to Emily. They arrived after sunset, the darkness illuminated only by police lights and flashlights. A crowd stood on the roadside, and in the center lay a suitcase containing Emily Peguero's decomposing body, a 16-year-old girl 5 months pregnant. After extraction from the suitcase, the body was sent to the medical examiner's office. The autopsy was conducted fairly quickly. It was found that Emily had suffered internal bleeding, presumably caused by a failed attempt to terminate her pregnancy. She had also received a blow to the skull with a blunt object. According to the forensic examination, death came very quickly. Most likely, the girl didn't even have time to understand what happened. Unfortunately, the Peguero family and the public were right from the start. All this happened because Marlon and his mother Marlon were not happy about Emily's pregnancy. They were adamant in their desire to get rid of someone who could damage their reputation. When the autopsy results were made public, everyone was furious. By that time, the story of the missing girl had spread worldwide. Her photos in a red traditional Dominican dress flooded social media. This attracted the attention of several celebrities who shared information about Peguero among millions of followers. In an attempt to garner support, the girl's family launched a campaign with the hashtag #WeAreAllEmily. Relatives didn't want the Martinezes to get away with it because they were wealthy and influential. Communities truly united to pressure authorities and prevent this case from being buried. While people across the internet expressed their opinions about the incident, the parents faced a harsh reality. Emily Peguero was buried in a white casket. Many people came to bid her farewell, all holding pink balloons. Numerous attendees brought flowers for Emily and gifts for the Peguero family to show their support during such a difficult time. Meanwhile, the police conducted their investigation. They discovered that Marlon hadn't taken Emily to the gas station that morning, as he had told her sister and reporters. This was a complete fabrication. To conceal this, he had sent a message from her mobile phone to Peguero's sister. Adalgisa, Emily's mother, wasn't mistaken when she doubted its authenticity. Instead of the gas station, Marlon took the girl to his mother's empty apartment, where he forced her to drink an unknown liquid that could have triggered a termination of her pregnancy. This caused internal bleeding. Emily became frightened and possibly tried to flee or lunged at her boyfriend. He pushed her, misjudging his strength. Peguero fell and hit her head. She died almost instantly. After taking Emily's life, Marlon placed her body in a bag, left his mother's apartment, and loaded the burden onto the back seat of his car. It was then that he was caught on the apartment building's surveillance cameras. The young man drove around town and, unable to think of anything better, dropped the bag containing his girlfriend's body from a bridge onto the ground. He then called his mother and told her what he had done. Marlon asked her to help better conceal the body so it wouldn't be discovered immediately. Later that day, a security guard called her and showed her the video footage. That's when Marlon realized her son could end up behind bars and sought help. Early on August 24th, Marlon, along with his son and 2 accomplices, discussed what to do with Peguero's body. Angry that her son hadn't thought to hide the girl's remains in a secluded place, she insisted on correcting the mistake. The woman bribed an acquaintance to help re-hide the remains. The man went to where the bag containing Emily's body lay under the bridge. He transferred the body into a suitcase and dumped it on a roadside about an hour's drive from Chenov. He hoped that when the suitcase was discovered, it couldn't be linked to Emily's disappearance. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video. It's really important. Eventually, alongside the Martinezes, the police arrested 4 more individuals: Marlon's brother, her close friend, and 2 employees. However, all 4 agreed to testify and act as witnesses, so they spent some time in a detention center before being released. These people weren't directly involved in the crime and cooperated with the police. In the end, Marlon and his mother Marlon were the only ones who stood trial for taking Emily's life. The trial was incredibly tense. Throughout the 9 months following the girl's death, each week brought a new dramatic moment to the pre-trial proceedings. Members of the Peguero family boycotted some hearings. Several defense attorneys withdrew outside the courtroom, and local activists staged protests. Ordinary people, residents of Chenov, threatened to harm Marlon and his mother. It got to the point where Marlon had to wear a bulletproof vest and protective helmet when brought to the courthouse. Otherwise, the enraged public would have simply torn her apart. In April, Emily Peguero's father, Genaro, was arrested after attempting to bring a firearm into the courtroom. When the prosecution decided to recreate the crime scene, they brought in the suitcase in which the girl was found, along with a pair of shoes and clothing. The evidence emitted such a strong odor that the investigative experiment had to be conducted outdoors. Everyone gathered outside in the parking lot, and the prosecution team demonstrated the position in which the body was found and how it was extracted from the suitcase. It was extremely difficult for the Peguero family to watch this demonstration. They were already crushed by grief, and now they had to relive it all again. The defense attorney claimed that Marlon was innocent in his girlfriend's death. He hadn't intended to take her life that morning. Marlon's own story changed 3 times during the investigation. First, he confessed to finishing off Emily and leaving her body at the dump. The second time, the young man stated that Peguero had taken a pill herself because she was very distressed about her pregnancy, and this pill led to the fatal outcome. The third version was that his mother wasn't involved at all and didn't even know Emily had died. Marlon's inconsistent accounts led to a complete loss of credibility. The Peguero family's lawyer believed that after Marlon's attempt to forcibly terminate the pregnancy failed, he decided it would be better if Emily simply disappeared rather than taking her to the hospital and risking his freedom. He hadn't expected her body to be found, nor had he anticipated such a reaction from the community. The lawyer openly criticized the Martinezes and wasn't afraid of Marlon's connections. His actions and words impressed the public. Of all the Peguero family, Adalgiza suffered the most, as she had once cared for this boy and his brothers. She fed them, put them to bed, and looked after them while Marlon built her career. Now, one of her charges had taken her youngest daughter's life. It felt like a slap in the face to the family. Emily's loved ones sincerely believed that all this happened because Marlon didn't want her son to have a child with a girl from a poor family. And Emily's demise was just the result of a failed intervention. But this in no way justified her being discarded like an unwanted object on the roadside. The trial was lengthy and extremely tense. In November 2018, a panel of 3 judges found Marlon Martinez guilty of intentionally taking Emily Peguero's life and sentenced him to 30 years in prison. His mother, Marlon Martinez, was found guilty of abduction and concealment of the body. She was sentenced to only 5 years in prison. When the verdict was read, shouts of anger erupted in the courtroom. People couldn't believe this woman would spend only 5 years behind bars after what she did to Emily. People protested against such a sentence, demanding Marlon's imprisonment for at least 20 years. But the court's decision remained unchanged. Marlon's lawyer said he planned to appeal, arguing that the young man's only intention was to make his girlfriend get rid of their shared problem, not to take Emily's life. It just didn't go as he planned, just like that. In addition to the sentences, the Martinezes also had to pay monetary compensation to the Peguero family, but money wouldn't bring back their daughter. All the parents wanted was justice, but they felt they didn't receive it. The next blow to their hearts came on May 15, 2019, when an appeals court reduced Marlon's sentence to just 2 years. The reason was that there was actually no way to prove the woman had committed a crime. She only knew about her son's misconduct and didn't report it to the police. Then, in September 2020, a judge effectively ordered Marlon Martinez's immediate release. It's possible her connections played a role in this. When she left the correctional facility, a crowd stood near the prison shouting insults. Nevertheless, Marlon is now free and living her life quietly somewhere in the United States. Her son Marlon remains behind bars, though he enjoys special privileges there. There were rumors that another 16-year-old girl became pregnant by him. Apparently, guards sometimes allowed Marlon to leave prison and then return. None of this resembled the triumph of justice. Emily's father, Genaro, remembers how before leaving for work, he would go into his daughter's room and say goodbye, kissing her forehead. This ritual was part of their daily life, and now this memory tears his heart to pieces. In memory of his sister, Emily's brother wrote a 4-minute song telling everything that happened to her. The music video ends with the brother seeing Marlon pretending to cry at a press conference on TV and simply getting up and smashing the television. Emily's bedroom remains in the same state as the girl left it before her death. Red paper hearts, symbolizing love, are stuck to the headboard, and the window is draped with neon pink curtains. On her bedside table lies a stack of handmade bracelets, a small statue of Jesus, and a framed photo of the Pope. Her clothes are folded in the closet next to her collection of stuffed animals. The only new thing in the room is a collage of photos and messages in memory of Emily, made by students from her school. Latin America has one of the highest rates of femicide in the world. Every year in the Dominican Republic, about 200 crimes against women occur. In reality, this number is much higher, as not all crimes are reported. When the police were searching for Emily's body, they discovered the bodies of 2 18-year-old girls. One was killed by her stepfather, and the other by her boyfriend. And although Emily Peguero's death was just one case among many, the brutality of the crime and the involvement of a government official shocked the entire Dominican Republic. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.